Tickets are on sale now. You can text CHURCH right now to 877-353-0700. That's CHURCH to 877-353-0700 for a chance to win tickets right now to go see our church. All right, so this is kind of the time of year where you hone in on some of the college football media days to try to learn what some of these decision makers have in mind, kind of what they're thinking. Of course, I'll remind you, we were live in Dallas for Big 12 Media Days a few weeks ago, myself and Sean O'Connell. If you missed any of the sound from that, really good stuff, both the Utah and the BYU side of things and some big picture Big 12 conversations. I would encourage you to check out our website for the sound, which is ESPN700sports.com. Good stuff from Coach Witt. We had Smith Snowden, a really fun 20-minute conversation with Lander Barton. Keanu Tanavasa, who continues topically to be something people are talking about around here, stopped by for a fun conversation too. SEC Media Days in Atlanta a couple weeks ago. Actually, it was last week. So now it is the Big Ten in Vegas and the ACC in Charlotte. So topically, when it comes to the world of college football, as we kind of approach the season, certainly a lot of preseason polls. Mountain West Conference Media Days for Utah State last week in Vegas as well. Ike Larson was the only Utah State player to make the preseason All-Mountain West Conference team. And Utah State, year one, under Bronco Mendenhall, is picked to finish 9th in the conference out of 12 schools. The Mountain West Conference actually did have a preseason media poll. After last year's cluster, the Big 12 decided, you guys don't know anything, so we're not going to do any preseason media polls. So it's interesting to consider some of the things that have been talked about. And the most desperate cries continue to come from the ACC and continue to come from the Big 12. It's no secret for anybody that follows the sport, consumes the sport, or watches the sport, that the Big Ten and the SEC continue to, even in a very front-facing way, not in a way where they're trying to sneak around the narrative, inch closer and closer to creating what I perceive to be separation from those two conferences and the rest of the world of college football. And sometimes they do say the quiet part out loud, but the desperate pleas continue to come from, Brett Yormark is a master salesman. He's a master at his craft. Oftentimes it feels like a little bit of a politician type approach where he drapes his comments in filibustering type commentary to try to distract you from what he's really trying to do. And his job number one is to do what's best for the Big 12, because of course that's his job. But I do feel like whether you're Jim Phillips, who's the ACC commissioner, or Brett Yormark, who's the Big 12 commissioner, well, your main job is to your constituents. Your main job is to your member institutions and your schools and the athletic departments, and making sure that the modern approach in college football is something that you're able to digest, handle, and then operate at the highest of levels. I do feel like, and I listened to Jim Phillips today in Charlotte at the ACC's annual kickoff event, their media days, and you listen to some of the commentary from these commissioners, and there's this desperate plea to like us for who we are. Whether it's the ACC and the ACC and the Big 12 a little bit. Some really big-time non-conference games this year. And I've never been one, and I'm talking about what the ecosystem of college football is right now, not the changing landscape of what college football could be. As long as we're in this space with the P4 conferences now, due respect to the newly rebranded Pac-12 that has some economic stability that they didn't have a couple of years ago, but they just don't have the brands or the quality of football programs or athletic departments to be considered alongside the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, or the ACC. So with the ecosystem being in what it is right now and the infrastructure being set up the way it is right now, I just feel like scheduling uniformity is the way to go, and you can do away with this, this debate full of ambiguity about 8 conference games or 9 conference games. And I believe in maintaining, and I think it's important to continue to maintain, big-time non-conference head-to-head matchups. And again, with the way that it is now, I do think eventually there will be no conference games, and eventually it will have an NFL feel. By the way, I'm a proponent of this because I do think one issue, and this isn't a super popular take because there are so many college football fans that will just watch any college football, the MACtion fans out there, the AAC conference fans out there. Like, I get that there's a romantic feel to the little guy in college football like there is not in the NFL, but we have to be grown-ups about this and follow the tea leaves and understand what the direction of the sport has been over the past 6-7 years, if not maybe a little bit more. And it's just moving into this space where every weekend you will have brand versus brand matchups. You will have the best teams in college football playing each other. The days of the cakewalk non-con games, I think, are going to be put to bed at some point. There will be no more Cal Poly in Salt Lake City to take on the University of Utah. There will be no more FCS, FBS. There will be no more little guy makes a trip up to a bigger market to take home a check as a result of their kids getting their heads kicked in. And economically, that could be devastating, certainly to a lot of the smaller schools or smaller brands. But as we talk about on this show all the time, really, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to this sport, and it's not just a dynamic that's in college football, it's pretty much any sport on any level that is able to generate revenue via live TV rights, which is the lifeblood of sports right now. You have to, and you are beholden to the decision-making processes of powerful television executives that have made it clear for a long, long time that, okay, we get it. This is for the smaller schools to get a paycheck. We get it. This is part of the ecosystem of college football, but no more Saturdays where we turn on the TV and Utah's in Laramie to take on Wyoming. No more Saturdays where it's Alabama and, whoever they decide to schedule like the 9th week of the season in this weird scheduling quirk that the SEC has where they bring in like Rider or UMass or something, right? So eventually, with the way the ecosystem will settle into a new infrastructure, I think the scheduling conversation will take care of itself because I don't think you're going to have a choice. It's just like NFL teams. There's just not a lot of wiggle room. The league's going to tell you who you're going to play. They're going to weight the division opponents, the conference opponents, so you'll play them a couple of times. And then depending on the luck of the draw, maybe you get an easier schedule or a more difficult schedule. But this topic continues to permeate media days. And as far as the reaction or messaging or narrative creation, it is entirely reliant and dependent on which conference you're in bed with. So if it's Brett Yormark or if it's Jim Phillips from the Big 12 or the ACC, it is all about, the CFP model that does not weigh in the favor and direction of the Big 10 and the SEC. You can cry about it all you want, but every time the Big 10 or the SEC has a chance to kind of express their side of things, and certainly there is an interesting divide right now, even between those two conferences, as far as the CFP model, when it is expanded to 16, how many auto bids per league? 4 for the Big 10, 4 for the SEC, 2 for the Big 12, and 2 for the ACC. Then obviously room for a group of 5 team and then some at-large bids. But, the ACC and the Big 12 continue to push back on that. But most of the Big 10 seems to be on board with it, and the SEC has a really interesting split as far as what they believe should happen. But back to the original point, as long as we're in this space with the conferences set up the way they are and the sport set up the way that it is, I don't think anybody should have any wiggle room that gives them an unfair advantage over their peers, even if you're not in the same conference. And whether it's 8 conference games or 9 conference games, just decide on a number. And if there's genuine concern about maintaining geographical and regional rivalries, which, by the way, I do believe, even though I've never been a proponent of amateurism and the term student athlete was created to avoid labor tax, when it comes to the romantic side of college football, first and foremost, it is rivalries and regional rivalries. And yes, I'm speaking in a place that has one of the best in the country, and I'm bullish and selfish in a way that I want to see that continue year after year. Of course, BYU, Utah in the same conference, so that's not a problem. But I feel like every time I hear an excuse as to why they can't go to a scheduling uniformity setup, regardless of what conference you're in or what member institution you belong to, it's window dressing to avoid, really the bottom line, which is I don't think these schools want to have big-time tests week in and week out. I don't think these football programs want to have big-time conference games every week, and I think they like kind of their glorified buys with some of the smaller schools rolling into the stadium to take home a check. But I think that's going to go away. So interesting to hear some of the comments from Jim Phillips today at the ACC event in Charlotte and the Big Ten Media Days, not too far from where we're at in Las Vegas. We'll talk more college football coming up on the other side as our first guest on a Tuesday show will be Stevenson Sylvester. We're live today at Beer Bar. It's 161 East, 200 South, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. They've got both patios open with some misters, so you can kind of cool down a little bit if you want to grab an adult beverage. If you're not into that, they have non-alcoholic options, and they have a brand new menu that has been rebranded. Once upon a time, it was pretty much only burgers and brats. Now they have the famous Cotton Bottom Garlic Burger. They've got a breakfast sandwich they offer all day, a new turkey sandwich on the menu, a pastrami sandwich, French dip sandwich, and a bunch of different salad options as well. So it's a newly rebranded place. And coming up this week, they have a really cool event on Thursday. For a lot of people, it is Pioneer Day. And then for some other people, they celebrate Pie and Beer Day. Pie and Beer Day, the event is going to be at the Smith's Ballpark, the old home of the Bees, before they left us to go down south. And then on Wednesday night, the night before Pioneer Day, or Pie and Beer Day, they're going to have a party here at Beer Bar celebrating and getting it going. So, again, the address is 161 East, 200 South, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. We've got Pablo Mastroianni, we got Joe Cravens, we have Andy Larson. But we'll catch a break, and coming up on the other side, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah, it's Sly himself, Stevenson Sylvester, batting leadoff on a Tuesday drive. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Yeah, Ozzy Osbourne passed away today at the age of 76. I actually forgot to mention that to Porter, but he's on it. So some sad news. Legendary rock star and like reality TV pioneer. Randomly, we're live today at Beer Bar. Come on by and say what's up. 161 East, 200 South, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. We got Pablo Mastroeni hopping on in just a little bit. Joe Cravens will join us, as will Andy Larson. But we are less than 40 days away from the college football season, which means it's time to start our consistent conversations with our next guest, Stevenson Sylvester. Stevenson Sylvester will join us in a moment. One of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah. So we'll bring in Pablo. We've got Joe Cravens. We have Andy Larson. Here at Beer Bar, 161 East, 200 South, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. They've got an event coming up on Thursday at Smith's Ballpark. It is Pie and Beer Day. For some, it's Pioneer Day, which is great. No judgment. You do your thing. Beer Bar on Wednesday night, prior to Pioneer Day or Pie and Beer Day, is going to have a party here at their location. It starts at 7 o'clock. They're going to have some DJs here. They'll have a DJ outside. They're going to have one inside as well. They're selling a special bourbon caramel apple pie that night. And then coming up on Pie and Beer Day at Smith's Ballpark, they're going to do a coconut curry chicken pot pie. They're going to have their friends at Hopkins stop by. They've got a mango passion fruit sour beer they're going to be selling and a bunch of new food items. Beer Bar has kind of rebranded a little bit. They closed for a little bit, and then they redid their kitchen. There's some new signage that indicates they've also rebranded their menu. With a cotton bottom garlic burger. It's a local legendary dish they brought over to Beer Bar. They're now serving breakfast sandwiches that you can get all day long. A new turkey sandwich on the menu, French dip, pastrami, and then a bunch of different salads. So once upon a time, it was pretty much only burgers and brats, and their fries are really, really good too. But a rebranded situation here at Beer Bar at 161 East, 200 South in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Do we have Stevenson Sylvester on the phone? All right, we'll bring in Sly in just a minute and remind you that Pablo will stop by, so will Joe Cravens, and Andy Larson will join us later on. Kyle Filipowski was named MVP of the Vegas Summer League team, or I should say the Vegas Summer League period. So a great Summer League performance from Kyle Filipowski, so well-deserved. Let's try once again. Stevenson Sylvester, can you hear me, sir?
What's up? I feel like I'm trying to do a political campaign. You can't get in touch with me.
We got you now, man. We got you now. It's good to hear your voice. It means college football is right around the corner. Let's just start with a macro question, Sly. I know you're a Utah man, and you're always confident in the team, and we love that about you. What gives you the most confidence that year 2 in the Big 12 will look a lot better than year 1 did?
Experience. That's it. I know the Big 12 loved Utah's fall last year. And so, which is fine. One thing about competitors, you got to be able to adjust, right? And same thing, Marshawn Lynch, same thing Mike Tyson used to say is, what are you going to do when you get hit in the mouth? Utah got hit in the mouth last year, so how are you going to react? And Coach Kyle Whittingham has always been notorious from being able to bounce back and adjust, right? That's one thing that over the years that I've known him, and even beforehand, I think he's done a terrific job with adapting and understanding, evolving with the game. And so I think that that's what they've done with the roster changes that they've done this year. A lot of things are just like, okay, we know how to go about it, right? We talked about it, right? 8 more points a game and we're a 10-win season, right? And so, there's just a couple things to go into that, but mainly it's experience. We have experience with the conference, with competitors, with, flying into small towns and playing those games early or later. There was just a lot of experience that happened. Of course, a quarterback situation last year was just a huge bugaboo that nobody was anticipating. But I think the experience in having that awful situation and not, handling that well, right? There was experience there. So hopefully they can adjust here coming to this fall. But you got a lot of guys coming back. Very strength is your core, right? Your offensive line, your defensive line, linebackers of your team, and then you grow out from there. But we got talent all over the place, and it's an 11-man game. Just because somebody has one guy doesn't mean they can beat the other 11. And I think that Coach Scally and Coach Whittingham know how to bring a team together. And so that's what gives me confidence in the Utah Utes.
Tell me, Sly, and our listeners, I feel like the name Jim Harding, certainly those of us that cover the team and know the team know who Jim is. Mm-hmm. But at Big 12 Media Days, Coach Witt called him the best offensive line coach in the country. And it seems like every day when I get ready to do the show and I'm reading around with some prep, there's more praise being heaped on this offensive line on like a daily basis with Spencer Fanu and Caleb Lomu. Two all Big 12 preseason selections. Dane Brugler released his mock draft, and he has Spencer as a top 5 pick. What should our Ute fans who tuned into the program know about Jim Harding? What makes him so good at his job?
Man, well, I didn't know that Spencer got a top 5 pick. I know it was a first round grade, but top 5 is pretty daunting, man. That's awesome. And Spencer's great, man. I absolutely love his personality, and I think with those accolades, with those praises, he's going to do nothing but try to make that happen. But as far as Coach Harding's concerned, you're only as good as your resume, and look at Coach Harding's resume. This guy has put out offensive linemen over the years being here at Utah. He's just done a terrific job year after year. That comfortability here at Utah, his ability to recruit, and not only just recruit, because bringing guys is one thing, but being able to adapt to that person's skill set. He's gotten players all across the board from center, guard, tackle. He's not just like, oh, I only make tackles. Right? No, he's got guards, centers, tackles, and he's done it for a long time here at Utah. So Utah fans should definitely, give him praise and really acknowledge his whole coaching staff. I've said it many times. I'm like, that's where you start. The foundation starts from top down, right? From the head coach to the coaching staff, because that's what's going to translate to the players. And if that's strong and that's confident and that foundation is in there, you're going to have a successful football team. And so University of Utah has done it. They haven't been rotating coaches like other teams do. Of course, you have one here or there. But that's why Utah's defense is just always amazing. How long has Coach Schwan, Sharif Shah, Morgan Scally, Lou Powell, how long have these guys been together, working together, right? That consistency, that cohesiveness only bodes well for success, and that's what Coach Harding is on the offensive side of the ball. I believe this is, 10, 11 years for him at the University of Utah. And so, he's just done it, and you can only respect the guy who's been here, and not only been here, he's been putting guys out, from first-round picks of Garrett Bowles to undrafted guys making teams. He's just done it, and so you got to give him a lot of respect.
So it was interesting, Sly, at Big 12 Media Days, over the course of 2-3 days of conducting interviews, I didn't have one guest, whether it was a coach or a player in the Big 12 or a media member who covers the league, express any concern or trepidation about Devin Dampier, who was named Big 12 Newcomer of the Year. I thought there would be, maybe one or two voices that were concerned about the jump in competition, the fit, and of course part of that is he just simply followed his head coach, his coordinator, who he knows so well, and Jason Beck up here. So it's nice that the ambiguity concerning who will play that position is out the window. We know that it's Devin. We know there's familiarity between Devin and Coach Beck, who he had down at New Mexico. We know the deal: 2,768 yards through the air, 12 touchdowns and 12 picks. And then 1,166 yards on the ground, 19 touchdowns. Had a chance to interview him. He's a delightful young man. What are your expectations for Utah's QB1 this year?
I love it. And, you were saying it about other guys' perception of Devin Dampier, of course, coming in to this season. He was, number 4 overall in total yards per game in the whole nation. And one quote that I've, been hearing since high school is, you can't coach speed. And this guy has speed. He can get out and make it happen. And what I love is when things break down, he can trust his legs to get it done, right? We got that 3rd down and 6, and we need a big play. And the defense coach, the guys down south, those guys down south called the perfect defensive call to cover up our receivers. guess who can make a play is our quarterback, and he can go not only for 6 yards, he can go for 40 in that aspect. We've seen that with Nate Johnson was here a couple years ago of his ability to get out of the pocket and then put the defense on skates. That's what Devin Dampier is going to be going into, and be able to, like, it's so hard to game plan for a guy like that, right? Because, you know, as a defender, what you tell the defense is like, get pressure on the quarterback, force him out of the pocket, make him uncomfortable. The problem for me is in what I've seen. Of course, I got to see a little bit more, but what I've seen is he's comfortable in that normal, uncomfortable quarterback position, out of the pocket, throwing on the run, and getting pressure in his face. That's when I think he's thrown some of his most accurate balls that I've seen, and where he just seems confident and literally not second guessing himself. And so, yeah, I'm expecting big things out of QB1 this year, and I know he's got a lot on his shoulders. So it's going to be up to his teammates to kind of relieve that burden, relieve that stress, so he's not feeling it every game, because, you know, his name is reverberating throughout the NCAA right now, and what he can do with this powerful offensive line.
So one of the things that several people pointed out, and honestly, Coach Witt himself kind of alluded to this, I was a little bit surprised. And, you know, Kyle's very smart and measured, so he made it clear that he wasn't trying to knock on anybody. But when analyzing tape from Devin a year ago, Kyle kind of called it a one-man band. Not a great offensive line. You know, some decent weapons, but he basically said, you know, Devin kind of made that happen on his own. When you look at the offensive line that will be in front of him, a running back room that appears to be really crowded, there are certainly questions about who he's going to throw the ball to. But what are the expectations? Like, if Devin can do that a year ago with an offensive line that was left wanting, and now he's got an offensive line with 2 tackles that are probably first-round picks and a bunch of veteran players in front of him, how does that unlock him, Sly, with the ability to actually have playmates in the sandbox to help him do his thing?
I don't think people understand how important confidence is at every level. Even when you think like Ben Roethlisberger or Aaron Rodgers just has it made, right? There's still a little bit of hesitation when they're not confident in, you know, certain abilities of their teammates or the game plan, the scheme. And that hesitation is all a defense needs to know, or all the defense, that little edge is all the defense needs to make a play. But when you have a quarterback who's unconscious and just confident, they're going to deliver the football. They're going to deliver wins. They're going to deliver points. They're going to put points on the board. And that is what builds more confidence throughout the game. You get an edge on your defense, or on the opponent's defense, by making them one-dimensional because you're up by so many points. And so I think that's going to be just huge for Devin, just to be in a more comfortable situation, because not only is the offensive line that you're talking about, it's the defense. What do we talk about all the time throughout the year is complementary football, right? Is the defense just as good as offense? And so, yeah, the one-man band in New Mexico, he didn't have a defense like he has with Coach Scally right now. And so being able to do that and practice against that every day is making him better. And now he's got talented guys like Wayshawn Parker and Nakiri Rogers in the backfield. Dallin Bentley is outstanding tight end. But I think my breakout offensive player this year is, aside from Devin Dampier, is probably going to be Hunter Andrews. I don't think people understand how versatile that guy is. You put on his high school tape, which I was studying a year ago, that guy does it offensively, defensively, but they've moved him to the offensive side of the ball. You can hand the ball out to that guy as if he's the running back. You can put him in motion. He's the next Brant Keithy for this offense, man. So be looking out for him to have a breakout redshirt freshman year this year, and I'm really excited to see him. And then you got a 6'5" Otto Tia at tight end. I think this is going to be tight end you again. We just need a quarterback to be able to get these guys the ball and just watch them work. And so this is going to be a very exciting, dynamic offense. Of course, we need to find out what this our wide receiver one is going to look like. But one thing I do like about Coach Beck is his versatility and ability to adapt to personnel, right? Yeah, I have a system, but it's more about what do I have at my disposal, and that's what I will put on display week to week. And so absolutely love that and look forward to seeing that this year.
It's interesting you mentioned Hunter, and it's a really good name to watch out for because at Big 12 Media Days, his name came up quite a bit. As this, yeah. But your points are well taken because a lot of people believe he will be this Swiss Army knife utilized by Coach Beck in unique ways. But the other thing, and this was kind of funny, Sly. So Coach Witt sits down with Sean and I, and we're talking about a bunch of different things, and then he just offered up that we will see Lander Barton and Smith Snowden on offense this year. Ironically enough, Paul Kirk walks over with Smith and Lander because they were two of the players. They sit down with us, and I brought it up to them. Hey, your head coach just said we're going to see you on offense this year, and they both looked at me and then looked at each other like, wait, we're not supposed to talk about that. But Coach Witt let it out of the bag. Lander Barton, Smith Snowden potentially used on offense this year. What do you make of that?
I mean, well, two things. I cover high school football with KSL, and so I watched both of those guys in high school, and I thought Lander was going to be a better tight end than linebacker. Honestly, his whole senior year, he played tight. I didn't even really see him play linebacker because he was so dominant on defense. It was kind of just like whatever. But on offense, his ability in space was just uncanny. It's awesome. He has a great offensive knack. And same thing, Teo Johnson. Don't be hesitant if you don't see him. You saw the way he returned that field goal last year. Yep. And he was a quarterback. He was a quarterback that converted over. He's another guy that can play both sides of the ball. Smith Snowden, athletic talent, speed for days. I think defensive guys that understand the defensive side of the ball can make that change to offense, right? Because they understand what defenses are looking at, what they're expecting when they're making their splits on the offensive side of the ball. They know what the defender is looking at. Lander Barton as a tight end, when I watched him, he knew why the linebacker was at the apex between him and the offensive line of scrimmage. And when he went in motion, they just understand that, which will give them the edge on the offensive side of the ball and make things happen. And so, you could definitely see Lander as a Mike Vrabel in the red zone. But I think Coach Witt, man, I think he is more on the tunes. Like, I'm not getting in a position where I am last year where we're not scoring any points. I'm using all of my personnel at every point in the game to make this happen. I'm not saving grace. I'm not putting anybody where they ain't supposed to. I want to win football games, and that's what I wish we would have did last year, and what I think we're going to be going into this year. So Utah fans got to be excited about all of that.
Were you ever an offensive guy? I mean, it's interesting. We had Chase
All
Hansen.
State, baby.
I knew it. See, because we had Chase Hansen in studio yesterday, and the deal is the best athletes play like quarterback or running back like in high school, and they dominate. And then a positional switch will occur next level if you are somebody that's built like you or Nate or whatever. So what position did you play on offense, Sly? What did that look like?
Well, I had they gave me All-State for tight end, but we ran a spread offense, so I was just slot receiver pretty much. But, yeah, man, I was racking it up. You throw me the ball. You know, I love contact. In offense, I was the guy, of course, I'd have all this open space, and I would see a guy – in open space. Instead of running straight for the end zone, I just run him over. I just go, I beeline for him instead of running to the open space. So I loved contact, and that just made me even more furious on the offensive side of the ball. So that's why I was saying Lander, him as a tight end was just amazing. And I think it's going to be well. But first day all tight end and linebacker, man, that was crazy because I didn't think I was going to do it. And I just had fun my senior year and made that happen. But, yeah, I played definitely both sides of the football. It was crazy.
The anatomy, Sly, of a position switch, what does that look like? And we talked about this with Chase. And I don't have necessarily data to compare Utah coaches and their decision to change positions juxtaposed to other coaches in college football. But it just feels like it's one of the elite skills that Kyle and Morgan have to say, okay, Nate Orchard, you're a wide receiver at Highland, but you're a defensive end for us. Or Chase, you're a quarterback, but we think you can play safety and linebacker. The Krugers, I could keep going. I mean, it feels like every year the coaches identify a talent in one spot to say, well, if you really want to play and excel, then you need to play this position. What's that process like, Sly?
Man, I mean, yeah, you really can go all day. I mean, even my time when I played, from Sean Smith starting at running back, moving to receiver, then next, plays 6 months at corner and is a second round draft pick, right? So, but I think that's just coaches' abilities, right? Their recruiting abilities. They know, like, I think, because I was skinny, of course, but like in them assessing me and seeing stuff, they're like, we can do something with that guy, right? And that's the mindset that coaches have, instead of like, oh, linebacker, a quarterback, maybe not. No, they're like, that guy's athletic. We're going to find a spot on this football team for him. And it may take a couple weeks to see exactly where his talents are, but what they do is they watch, because Scally and Coach Witt and all these coaches, they're such nerds. When it comes to film, every time I go to a facility, that's all they're doing. I'm just like, how many times you guys got to rotate your chairs because of how worn your chairs are with watching film? And so when they watch film, all they do is just assess these guys, from the current people on the staff to their opponents to recruits that they want to have come in, just film. And so they know exactly what it takes in the system that they're running and what positions need what, right? And then all you need is that one, because I remember Coach Witt was so proud when Sione Vaki started playing offense. He's like, yeah, that was my idea. Make sure you say that, Sly. That was my idea, that to put Sione Vaki on offense, and you saw how electric he is. So I think, Travis Hunter has definitely set the stage for college football this next year with people playing both sides of the ball. But, traditionally, as you said, you were running down. Utah's done a terrific job with analyzing talent and understanding where they fit on the football field and putting people in the best positions to succeed, which you hear them say every single interview. And so I just hats off to Utah for doing that, because they've made a lot of careers out of former Utah guys by doing that.
All right, Sly, before I set you loose, one of my favorite, maybe my favorite conversations we had at Big 12 Media Day was with Lander Barton. And, you are on the list, and I always talk about this as we're previewing Utah's football season. It feels like every year there just is one of those dudes that makes the game-changing plays on defense. The Devin Lloyds, the Eric Weddles, the Clark Phillips, the Chase Hansons, the Stevenson Sylvesters. Does it feel like Lander is that guy this year, assuming full health, because the poor kid just couldn't get healthy last year? What do you think it looks like for Lander this year?
Well, it's great. It's all confidence. I mean, and just, everything going on. There was just the last couple of years, the Cam Rising news and the news and whatnot of it, is there was just so much distraction. Nobody was really playing free. Everybody was just locked up, and it was just very, very uncomfortable. And so hopefully things are a lot more settled. Processes are just good. There's no more outside noise. You focus on what you're doing. As you said, Lander Barton was getting healthy throughout the season, because I was watching, especially the Arizona State game, and I'm just like, what the heck is he doing? Like, why is his footwork so bad? And his footwork was horrible in the Arizona State game. But he corrected that throughout the season, got better and better. Because I was just like, the year before, you weren't making these mistakes. So I can point it out and being like, what are you doing? But later on in the season, you see him, Iowa State, he was a beast in that game. And he just got healthier and healthier. And so now coming into the season, there's confidence, there's comfortability, there's no outside noise. All you got to do is play ball. And so I hope that's what happens for him. But I think that we have multiple guys. And, sometimes when you have a headliner like Lander Barton, he gets all the attention as far as the offensive game plan. And then you have other guys that shine. It opens it up for other guys. And so if you got a complete team, you can make that happen, man. So I'm really excited to see who that's going to open up for. And for me, my guy's Logan Fano on defense. He's going to be that game changer, that strip sack guy, that Sack Lake City guy this year. And then even who's going to replace them, because we got to have a nice rotation. Cash Dillon is an interesting talent, man, and he's going to be in his redshirt freshman year. Paul Fitzgerald on the other side, elite speed. Even Carson Kafusi up the middle, true freshman. It just opens it up when you have guys like Lander. So my senior year, because there was a lot of preseason media hype, I was used a lot as a decoy on the outside. So we would shift a lot onto one side and bring the blitz on the other side, and things would open up and everybody else would make plays. And that's just team defense. And so Lander is going to bring that, but he's just a guy who can create, right? That's the Eric Whittle types who can just create off of nothing. And so I'm very excited to see the confidence, the leadership that he brings to this defense, and watch this defense reign supreme in the Big 12.
Sly, thanks for the time, man. Always appreciate it. We're less than 40 days away. You're going to blink, and it's going to be here, dude. So be good. We'll chat soon, okay?
You're the man. Thanks.
All right, Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah, Super Bowl winner with the Steelers. Appreciate his time. All right, we're live at Beer Bar today, 161 East, 200 South. And my next guest, Brad Wheeler. Sir, how are you?
Nice to meet you, Spencer.
Really nice to meet you. I was disappointed. Is that a cowboy hat?
Yeah, that is a Stetson Open Road.
Oh, so that's like a top shelf cowboy hat.
Well, they call it like Countrypolitan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
very
it's
nice.
Like you can, somewhat in the city, somewhat in the country. You're somewhere in between, I guess.
I love it. Well, thanks for stopping by. We're here in support of this event coming up. So Thursday for some is Pioneer Day. It's great.
That's right.
For another subset of folk in the market, it is Pie and Beer Day, Brad. So tell us about this event.
Pie and Beer Day. It is the 13th annual Pie and Beer Day. Some people have heard about it. Many have maybe not experienced it. But we have the world's largest assemblage of pie and beer happening at the Old Smiths Ballpark. Over 8,000 slices of pie.
Okay.
We have 21 breweries, 21 bakeries. They come together. They pair pie and beer.
Uh-huh.
And we have a good time. And this year, like I said, we're having it at the stadium. And we're having a giant kickball game to go along with it. Have you heard about this?
I am learning in real time. I learned that it would be at the stadium, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I did not know there was going to be kickball.
Yeah.
With pie and beer and kickball, that's going to make for some maybe viral social media posts, I would imagine.
A lot of people are telling me, you need to use the stadium and maybe have like a celebrity baseball game. And I thought to myself for a while, what celebrities do we have in Salt Lake City that can play baseball? I didn't think Robert Redford was going to come to our rescue, nor the Osmonds, nor was Bill Allred going to strike out Craig Worth on third base. So someone said, hey, do you know about these kickballers in Sugar House? And I said, no. They said, go check them out. How many kickball teams do you think there are in Salt Lake City?
Well, the way you're asking feels like the number's higher than I want to guess, so I'm going to guess 12.
There's 135 kickball teams in Salt Lake City.
I was way off.
I feel like I discovered like a subculture that I had no idea about.
Yeah.
They're very excited. They're coming, and the enthusiasm of them has created some enthusiasm. Nick Romaldo now is putting together a team with Kyle Becker from
Kyle Beckerman. Yeah,
Kyle
cool,
Beckerman
cool,
are coming,
cool,
and the folks here from Beer Bar and Bar X are participating. It's going to be a pretty wild thing. I'm pretty excited to bring kickball into the stadium, sort of like we brought Pie and Beer Day out of the shadows and into the public. We're going to probably do the same with kickball this week.
So where can people get information and buy tickets and do the things they need to do to get access?
Tickets are the day of. We have them at the stadium.
Okay.
You pay $30 for a pie pass.
Okay.
You get 6 pairings of pie and beer with that pie pass.
For $30?
Well, it's a little 4-ounce pour of beer and a little slice of pie. It's kind of a tasting event more than a kegger.
Sure.
And if you don't want to do that, you just want to come in and enjoy yourself, you can pay $5 at GA. We have some beer trucks. We have some soda trucks. We have pizza for the kids.
Lovely.
We have food trucks. And actually, that's something, too, that's new this year. First year that we've been able to have families come to do Pie and Beer Day together.
Very nice.
And there's also going to be a big party here.
That's what I want to ask you about
the night before.
Yeah.
It is going to be, this is the closest bar, I think, to the parade route here in Salt Lake City. And Rich and Duncan are going to have a shindig back here in the back parking lot. And it's been the home of Pie and Beer Day for many years. It's a very, I don't know how to say it, a special place.
For sure it is.
We've had some really tender bonding moments back there the last 13 years doing Pie and Beer Day. And they're going to keep that tradition going on the night before with all this activity going on down along the parade route. It's the closest thing Salt Lake has to Mardi Gras, that parade route the night before.
Yeah.
You know?
So here's the deal. Pie and Beer Day is on Thursday at the ballpark. What time do you guys get going?
It goes from 2 to 9.
2 to 9.
Kickball starts at 3.
Okay.
And I think Nick Romaldo is playing at like 4.
Okay,
I think
cool.
is when he comes out.
So that's on Thursday. Tickets available at the ballpark. But the night before, we're going to do an event here that starts at 7 o'clock and goes until close to celebrate Pie and Beer Day. So Wednesday night here at Beer Bar, then Thursday out of the stadium. Brad, really nice to meet you, man. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Come by and get some pie.
I would love
Watch
to.
some kickball.
I'll be there, man.
Yeah.
Okay, good
I'm
to see
excited.
you.
Okay,
yeah,
bye.
for sure. All right, Brad Wheeler, Pie and Beer Day coming up on Thursday. And again, the night before, we'll have a party here at Beer Bar beginning at 7 o'clock, and it's going to go until close. Beer Bar, 161 East, 200 South, in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. All right, we got 1 hour in the books. We got 3 hours to go. We'll switch gears. And bring in Pablo Mastroianni coming up on the other side to do a little RSL. Joe Cravens joins us for some hoops. Then Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll say goodnight at 6. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. All right, we are live today with our friends at Beer Bar in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, 161 East, 200 South, the home for all RSL watch parties. Every match, no blackouts. They do have Apple Television. Of course, Nick Raimondo, the legend himself, part of the ownership group here. They've got an event coming up on Thursday we'll tell you about. But RSL, back in action, welcoming in an old friend coming up on Saturday. It's the return of Chicho Arango. Last week, an interesting week. RSL went up to Portland and won at Providence Park, and then done in by one wonder strike against one of the best teams in MLS, Cincinnati 1-0. Our next guest, the head coach of RSL, Pablo Mastroeni, on a Tuesday afternoon. Pobs, happy Tuesday, man. How we doing?
Happy Tuesday, Spence. Doing well. Just prepping for this game at the weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So before we look forward, let's just talk big picture, since you and I haven't spoken for a little while. Prior to that loss against Cincinnati, you guys had gone 5 games unbeaten. And that Cincinnati game, man, that's a good team. We'll get to it. I felt like you guys were really bright and really good. But soccer's cruel, where one moment can decide a game. And you guys did that to Portland. Cincinnati did that to you. It's kind of the deal. But how do you feel like things are shaping up over the past 5, 6, 7 games where you guys have seen the form really turn around?
Yeah, I think, that break halfway through the, at the halfway mark was a great time to kind of reflect, digest, and really learn from some of the moments in the first part of the season. And the guys came in with a wonderful attitude, and really, the vibe around the training field was palpable, and I think it was a noticeable difference. And then the results, manifested themselves in a way where it validated the work that we were doing in the training. And I think, this league is so, it's such a streaky league. You get on a good run of form, you have a lot of belief, and the mistakes that we were making, in the first part of the season, we were cleaning those up, defending set pieces well. Even when we weren't defending set pieces well, we still found a way to win a game. And so, I think confidence and belief are critical to sustaining good performances and good results. And so, and like you rightly pointed out this week, and I thought the guys played a fantastic game, and we were done by a wonder strike, and that's a part of it. That hasn't changed the mindset, the mentality in today's training. The same type of energy that and in real focus that we've had in the last few weeks. So really optimistic to where the group is right now, and with the window opening up, and the addition of some players into a group that is confident at the moment, I think is a welcome sight.
So before we get back to Cincinnati, let me ask you about Portland. Let's kind of hone in on some of these games in a vacuum. Maybe I knew and I just forgot. I didn't realize it had been 8 years since RSL was able to get a league win up there, and that's a good team. And, you guys were able to snatch 3 with a late goal, kind of like Cincinnati did to you. But what do you like most about that performance, and what can a road win like that do to kind of solidify the group?
Yeah, I think, coming off of the Houston game, I felt like in the second half we struggled to find a way to get the ball back once we turned the ball over, right? So our defensive shape was a bit compromised at moments, and so we doubled down on that during the week. And what I saw against Portland was a team that knew exactly how important the structure was going to be and the roles within that structure. And more importantly, I think defending, the way I look at defending is it's just merely a mechanism to win the ball back. It's not a tactic, right? You defend because you don't have the ball. And so when you frame it from a perspective of we want to win the ball back because then we want to control the game with the ball, I thought we did a really good job in that game of being dominant with the ball and being so disciplined and dominant defensively, and then taking your chances that come. And obviously there weren't a ton of real clear chances in that game, but Diogo took his chance and game, set, match. And so, going into the Cincinnati game, it has a similar vibe where, and Spence, I think too, this is a product of now you're going down the home stretch. Every game's going to be tighter. Every game is going to be defined by the slightest of margins. And so, that's where I think in the Portland game we did a really good job. We were really disciplined and capitalized on the moment that presented itself.
So with the Cincinnati game, and I talked about this with a couple of people afterwards, I didn't leave that game, Pablo, with my head down about the form. I hope you felt the same way. Cincinnati is one of the best teams in MLS. They lead the conference in points, and I felt like you had the better of it. I know Diogo certainly will want one or two of those chances back. And I don't know much about this Luca Orellano kid. I think that's how you say it. But
yeah.
first of all, I mean, it was one of those goals where you got to tip the cap. There's nothing else you can do. Well done.
Right.
But overall, as you went back and reviewed it, did you feel like you guys had the better of it? And then what went through your mind when you watched that kid score with that left peg?
Yeah, when I went back and watched the game again, it was a lot of the sentiments I felt during the game where the first half it was a little bit transitional. They had some chances, we had some chances, but I think in the second half we really put our foot on the gas and did a great job of keeping them pinned in to their defensive half, creating a number of opportunities on their goal, defended transition moments really, really well, and I think on the goal we actually defended the transition moment really well. And again, I think, like you said, you have to tip off your cap because to hit a ball with your left foot from that part of the field and go across the goal to the far post, I mean, just the angles of that ball have to go in front of Ojeda on the left side, and then it's got to go in front of Glad, and then it's got to go in front of Rafa. And so it's one of those like 1 in 1,000 shots that you're going to score, and on this day he caught it perfectly, and the stars align. And so I think oftentimes as a coach you look at the result and you have this bad feeling in your bad taste in your mouth with how the game went. But it was one of those fluky moments where I felt like there was no way these guys are going to score on us tonight, especially the way we controlled the second half. So again, that's the whole thing about sports, and that's why it's so amazing, is that you never know which moment it's going to cost you the game, and you just got to be prepared for anything. But I think the overarching feeling of the game was a terrific execution of the tactics, and the only thing that let us down was that the goal, and not being able to score a goal. And so, and I've said this a lot this year, it's been our boogeyman this year. We've created quite a bit, and but I don't think, and not that I don't think, I know it hasn't changed the mindset and the belief within the group, and I think that's the most important thing.
How is – I heard somebody on some soccer show, and, who knows if they know anything about, anything, and you're the guy that watches these players play every game, and you're, obviously every training, you see things that none of us do. But I feel like there's maybe some concern about the partnership between Diego Luna and Diogo Gonçalves, just because they're both skilled in unique ways that might be similar to each other. How is that partnership going? What's that process like? Because they're so skilled. I would imagine when it clicks, it's going to be really special.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a disjointed year where I think Diogo had a hard time at the beginning of the year finishing his chances. In recent weeks, he's buried a couple. Diego was gone for a month with the national team, and now they're both coming into the team in a real positive way. And it's really about learning that, get that chemistry right. I think Diego's a really good positional player that needs balls played into him to be able to then play forward. And Diego's more of a guy that is just off the cuff, right? And so sometimes it's hard with Diego because he's a very instinctive player that makes plays. And, but what I've seen in the last, 2 weeks that the guys have been, or the last week that the guys have been together, has the amount of communication between the two of them, not only in games but in training, and getting that understanding back. Because now we're playing with a bit of a hybrid two-striker system with Gozo and Willie Agata or Ari Piol. And so the idea is to have these creative players underneath, but to have players ahead of the ball that they can pass to and combine with and create goal-scoring opportunities with. So I think it's still, we're essentially a week into this process, a week and a half. But I see some growth, and I think again, if you have quality players, they're able to solve problems in real time on the field, and that's what you need in order to continue getting results.
When you talk about the kind of new approach with the attack with Gozo, Agata, then Piol. When it comes to lineup decisions, obviously when you have 3 games in 7 days, you're gonna stagger to make sure the minutes aren't overwhelming for one striker or the other. But what do you like most about the 3 that you named, Agata, Gozo, and Piol, and what do you kind of instruct them to do to take advantage of the creative flair they have behind them with Diego and Diogo?
Yeah, great question. I think in order to give Diego and Diogo the kind of space that they need to operate in, whereas the first part of the season, Diego and Diogo were cramped because we didn't have stretch ahead of the ball, right? And I think when you have 2 strikers that are willing to run without the ball, that's what we're telling them to do, is essentially always be looking to hit to run in behind the defense. And in doing so, you drop the back line another 10 yards, and then the midfield line is stuck looking at the ball. And so now you have space for guys like Diego and Diogo to combine and to really drive the ball forward. And I think now having 2 more options ahead of the game has created a ton of chances for Gozo, a ton of chances for Willie. And more importantly, I think, Spence, from a psychology perspective, is defenses have to really – they have more questions to answer, right? Whereas before we had a lot of guys coming towards the ball. It was easy for a back line just to squeeze their lines and make the space really tight. Now when you have guys that are willing to break beyond, and if the timing is right, when the forwards stretch, our 10s drop, right? And in that moment, there's a gap to get the ball in turn behind the midfield line and really attack the goal. And so I think that complement is something that has given us a lot of success in recent weeks, and something that we want to continue to explore. And again, I think once Diego and Diogo are firing in all cylinders, I think we're going to be a very dynamic attacking team.
I have not asked you about this next player because I didn't know much about him. But, early on in the season when you were giving Gozo opportunities and he started taking advantage of them, and even when they weren't manifesting on the stat sheet, you could tell there's something bright about Gozo. I don't know that this Caliscan kid has the same juice that Gozo does, but the more and more I watch him, Pablo, the more and more I think he might have something here as well. So I haven't asked you about him before. He was with Portland. We talked to Kurt and Jason about the acquisition. But from the head coach's standpoint, what have you liked so far about him? What do you think he can be as he fully develops?
Yeah, I think Noel is a player. I think he's 25 years old and started late because he was in an international, so he's an older college student when he went to, I think, Loyola Marymount. And so he got drafted out, and he's a player that is experienced and beyond his years. He's kind of an old soul, carries himself like a guy that's been playing professionally for many years, the way he just trains, the way he looks after his body, the way he recovers. Everything is a 10 out of 10. And, I had this really interesting conversation that I'll share with you. In preseason, he was playing in the midfield, and so naturally he's a midfielder by trade. And, he was asking me about his opportunities, and I said, well, we got some real physical anomalies in the middle of the field with Emeka and Ojeda. And he says, Pablo, but I think the game's so fast. I feel like, if given an opportunity, I can achieve some of the same things in a different way. And it just expanded my mind. As coaches, I think we sometimes we get set in our way of thinking. And so he started, he was playing right back because we had a lot of pivots at the time, midfielders. And slowly but surely, with every training session, he became a beast in training. And so once he got his start, I don't know, a couple months ago at right back, he's never looked back. And this is a guy, Spence, that spends every afternoon. He'll ask Goza to go 1v1 with him. He doesn't ask another guy. He wants the fastest, the most dynamic player to go 1v1. And so here's a guy that just really cares about his trade. And so I think, again, it's amazing how many players come through RSL and other teams give up on and find a lot of joy here. But so proud of what he's been able to do. And the other part, too, is it hasn't been easy for him, right? No one's given him anything. He's had to literally beg and plead for an opportunity. And like you just rightly said, we give opportunities and they take them or they don't. The players take them or they don't, and they grow or they don't. And so nothing's come easy for Noel. and that's why I think he's a long-term, fit for the club. As far as like someone that you can rely upon in multiple positions, which is really hard to find these days, because the game of football has become so specialized. The fact that he can play right back and then against, Houston, and then come and play as a pivot against Portland and really be one of the top performers in that game says everything you need to know about Noel Koskin.
I'm curious about the anatomy of a position switch. We talk about this in football a lot. Our local team, the University of Utah, their head coach just somehow, some way has always been able to say, okay, you were a quarterback in high school, but now you're a defensive end. And he's just really good at it. I'm fascinated by it. And you referenced Noel, a midfielder by trade, who you've elected to play at outside back. What's the mentality there? Is it something you see in training? Is it a desire just to get the best players on the field, regardless of position? When you decide to encourage a player to switch positions, what does that look and sound like?
Well, I think too. There's a lot of components to it. One is their receptivity to that type of suggestion, right? So, like, you'll know right away. It's like, what do you think about just training out right back and seeing how it's going? And if you get a no nod, then it's not even worth pursuing, because if the player doesn't believe in it, But I think a player that is so hungry to get on the field is willing to do whatever it takes. And so Noel was like, yeah, I'll play right back. And so I think that's the first part. If you don't, because it can't just be the coach's idea, because it could be a great idea, but if the player doesn't buy in, then it's never going to work. So I would say that's the most important part. And then the other thing is, like, learnability. What's the player's, ability to learn something? And so, like I alluded to when I was speaking about his ability to think the game, he's a learner. He thinks the game. And so when you have really bright soccer players that can interpret space and time, they can essentially play anywhere they want if they're a willing participant. And so I think his smarts, and because he physically, if you look at him, you wouldn't think that he's able to cover ground. But we played Houston, who's got one of the most dynamic young wingers in the league, and he shut him down. And so he shut him down not by playing him at his strengths, which is his physicality, but outsmarting the player. And so his positioning was off the chains. And then him working on his 1v1s and having a really good idea of when he's going to stab at the ball. And, and these are things that you have to constantly practice at. And so if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to make yourself vulnerable, right, and put yourself in a position that isn't comfortable, but your desire to be on the first team is so great that it overshadows it, I think that's where you can get players playing multiple positions. But again, the most important person in any of these decisions is the player himself.
Give me an update on Emeka. I thought in limited minutes over the past couple of matches when he's been available, I mean, we all know that he's good. Obviously, he's your captain. But how's that progress coming, and how close are we maybe to seeing him start and play a full 90?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a conversation that we actually had today with our performance coach, and thinking about now we have a lot of games coming up. What's the best way to deploy Emeka to put him in the best position, again, to not get hurt, one, which is the most important, coming back from 6 weeks off. But two, to get him performing at the level that he has been performing the last two games, which has been really, really good. And so we'll look at how training goes tomorrow. Tomorrow's our biggest load day, and seeing how he feels. And then, obviously we want to get Emeka back out there because he's an important part, not only on the field, but in the locker room as well. And so, and now you have Pablo Ruiz, who's playing really well. You have Brian Ojeda, who I thought did really well in the game at the weekend. So there's going to be some competition in the middle of the field, but Emeka is a big part of the group, both on and off the field, and we want to get him back. So tomorrow we should have a better idea as to how we're going to utilize him to make sure we put him in the best position to be successful.
I want to follow up about Pablo Ruiz, because this is kind of a feel-good story that I don't feel like anybody's talking about. I mean, before his two knee surgeries and knee injuries, I felt like he was really on his way to becoming a star. I mean, he was taking a lot of your corners. He was taking a lot of the free kicks. And unfortunately, as you know, injuries have derailed so many careers. And I just wonder what it's like for you to see how hard he's worked to get back to this form and what that means to your club.
Yeah, no, I think Pablo Reese is a special player. We say that he's got a wand of a left foot. He can put that ball anywhere, to anyone on the field, whether it's on the ground, in the air, if it's lofted, if it's driven to your chest. And this guy, he really is a special talent. And what he's been through the last 2 years, a lot of times we'll just, like you said, it'll cut a career short, and it takes real mental fortitude to be able to overcome something like that. And I think the game against Portland that he played, I think solidified it to me that he's on the mend and he's on his way back. And I still think he's got, maybe 10% more to go to reach the kind of levels he was at before he got injured. But man, I'm just taken aback by his resolve and commitment and his quality in his play that we haven't had. Right. I think last year our team was a little bit different, so what we asked from our pivots was different. I think this year, in these last 6 games that he's played in, has brought a lot of consistency to the group, but also the relationships with Diego and finding those piercing balls between the lines where the guys can turn, and that's something that we haven't had. So I couldn't be happier for him. It's been grueling watching him, work outside of the group just to get back to full health. And now you're starting to see a guy that's flourishing and really contributing meaningful minutes to helping the team get great results.
You got a hungry San Jose team rolling into town on Saturday. They have not won in 6 matches. They have 4 draws and 2 losses. And when you look at the standings, both of you need points. Both of you are right there on the playoff line. They're on 29 points. You're on 28. They have a striker. Let's see if I can pronounce this name. I believe it's Chicho Arango. 11 goals, 5 assists. He's doing what Chicho does. What sort of extra layer does his return add, and what are you guys up against coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, I think, Chicho's a fantastic player, and, I think he still has really close relationships with the guys that were here last year. I think it'll be a kind of a mixed emotional game, before the game starts anyways. I think there's going to be a lot of emotions. I think once the whistle blows, you have 2 teams that, like you rightly pointed out, need points, right? And so I think all that flies out the window. But, San Jose is a team that thrives in transition. They have quite the attacking group of players that haven't played with each other for a long time, but all speak the same language as far as running and moving and the combination play at the top of the box. And then they have finishers in Espinoza, Martinez, and obviously Chicho. So, I think the game, if we're cheap with the ball and we give them space, it's going to cause a lot of issues for us. But I think we can control the game with the ball as we did in Portland, who's another very good transition team, and defend our box well, I think we'll be in a good way. So, I think it's going to be a very exciting game. I think there's a lot of great storylines coming into this game. But the most important thing for us is that we continue to, clean up some details and continue to believe as a group and continue to, get these points that are going to be critical down the stretch.
How would a young Pablo Mastroeni in his prime do at the MLS Skills Challenge, where we find Diego tonight?
I'll tell you what, not as good as you're going to see Diego Luna doing tonight. I'll tell you that. I don't know. I think, but Spence, I was just a role player. I was a guy that just won the ball back and gave it to the players that can do more than I could. And Diego's a real special talent, and he's doing all the work I did defensively, but he's also got a Ferrari-like attack that can create and score goals. So he's operating on a different planet than I was as a player. But I'll be rooting for him tonight, and I think he'll do well in the Skills Challenge for sure.
All right, before I set you loose, coming up on Thursday, the secondary transfer window opens. It is the summer transfer window. I don't want you to get in trouble, Pablo. I don't want anybody to give you guff for the answer, but I got to ask. I've seen these rumors. I'm hearing maybe a couple of 9s on the way. I'm hearing maybe an outside back. I don't know. What are you expecting when this thing opens? What can we expect to see?
Yeah, no, listen, there's definitely going to be movement. We've identified quite a few attacking players, both in like a 9 role and a 9.5 is what we're calling it. Essentially a guy that can play on the highest line, but also can combine near the box and is comfortable with his back to goal. So I think those two positions are positions that, you know, we feel like we can continue to improve our group and more importantly have some real depth into our group. You know, I think oftentimes this year where we fell short is just not having enough firepower coming into games when, again, the most important moments in games are in the last 15, 20 minutes, right? So I think that's definitely an area, and I think along the back line as well. You know, I think there's a couple different ways we can do this, but you know, I think everyone's been working extremely hard to make sure that we're bolstering the group in a way that puts us in contention for, you know, a good run at the end of the season, and even in, you know, in this Leagues Cup as well. You know, this is a tournament that we want to do well in, and you're playing against monsters like a Club America that are, you know, the you know, Central American powerhouse, and, you know, the really CONCACAF powerhouse team with a lot of history. And so in order to compete with these guys, we got to be able to make sure that we not only have talent on the field, but we have talent coming into the game to help us secure the results.
Last thing, as the head coach, do you get juiced at the prospect when you're watching tape of these players? Does it excite you? And then what are the main challenges to ingratiate new players into a locker room?
Yeah, no, I do, and it's not just for me. It's just the feeling of, you know, when I was a player and some new players came in. It did a couple things. One, everyone was pumped that you know, new players were coming in and that they're going to help the team. But the other part too is there's a competitive aspect to it. It's like, oh, this guy's coming to try to take my position. I gotta really pick up my game. So like, from my chair, I just feel it's a win-win situation. You know, obviously there's going to be some players that might be affected in the short term, or, you know, if they choose to let it affect them that way, versus I'm going to compete the right way. I'm going to show and bring the best out of my game to show that I'm up for the challenge. And so I think there's going to be some type of effect, you know, into our group. And I think a big part of that effect is going to be determined by the form the current team is in when these new players come. And so if these players would have come in the first part of the season, I would have been a bit hesitant to have higher expectations, given that they're coming into an environment that's not necessarily conducive to the adaptation of these new players. But now, given the run of form that we've been in and the way we've been playing and the belief in the group, I feel it's the perfect time to bring in players so that their adaptation into the group and their assimilation will be a bit more seamless. Although it's never easy in our league, I feel it's like the best case scenario to have players come into an environment that is rich with belief and good play, so that they can just come in and do their jam. So I'm really excited about the prospects, and I think you know, hopefully, you know, we can land a couple of these guys and get it over the line sooner than later, so that we can all enjoy a good finish to the season.
All right, my guy. Well, enjoy the skills challenge tonight. Good luck in training, and obviously good luck on Saturday against Chicho and San Jose. Thanks for the time, bud.
Thanks, Spence. Appreciate you, bud.
All right, Pablo Mastroeni, RSL head coach, Real Salt Lake, in the midst of really the best run of form they've had all year. They did lose over the weekend in Cincinnati. Prior to that, they went unbeaten in 5. And as a result, find themselves right in the mix. So San Jose is in town on Saturday. Obviously, the return of Chicho will be probably the biggest point of interest. San Jose is second in the West in goals scored. You would expect that, but they allow a lot of goals. They're actually third worst in the West in goals scored. So maybe we haven't seen a lot of high-scoring affairs from RSL this year, but maybe with the way San Jose plays, we will this weekend. San Jose currently is 9th in the West on 29 points. RSL is 10th on 28. So this is actually a sneaky big game for the lads. We're here for the lads, of course. So RSL back in action coming up this weekend, 7:30 Mountain Time on Apple TV. But tonight, 7 o'clock on Apple Television, is the MLS All-Star Skills Challenge featuring one Diego Luna. 5 different events. You can check out some of the events on Apple TV starting at 7 o'clock. We've got the Shooting Challenge. We have the Touch Challenge. That sounds weird. The Cross and Volley Challenge. All-Star Passing Challenge, and then the All-Star Crossbar Challenge, and finally, Goalie Wars. Oof. Intense and dramatic. All right, we're live today at Beer Bar, 161 East, 200 South, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Looks like we have a table full of Ozzy Osbourne fans taking tequila shots, so we're getting weird on a Tuesday if you want to come on down and check that out. But they've got a great event coming up on Thursday of this week. It is Pie and Beer Day for some, Pioneer Day for others. It's all right. All good. So on Thursday at 9 a.m. at Smith's Ballpark, the old home of the Bees, they're going to have a pie and beer tasting where you can gain entrance for $30 and get access to 4 kind of combos of pie and beer. They're going to have a kickball tournament featuring a team put together by our very own Nick Raimondo. So that's Thursday starting at 9. But the night before, here at Beer Bar, starting at 7 o'clock, they're going to have kind of a welcome party. They're going to have DJs, one outside, one inside. I can tell you they've rebranded the facility with new signage. They've redone their menu that now includes a breakfast sandwich, a turkey sandwich, a bunch of different salads, French dip sandwich, pastrami sandwich, and the famous cotton bottom garlic burger, in addition to the brats that you become accustomed to here at Beer Bar. So keep that in mind for Wednesday night. Also, Beer Bar is your home of all RSL watch parties, Utah football watch parties, NFL Sundays, Jazz Hoops, NBA basketball is my favorite place to watch a game here in Salt Lake. So it is Beer Bar, 161 East, 200 South, in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City. Joe Cravens is going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour, longtime college basketball coach who was friends with the late and great Frank Layden. We'll do some story time with Joe. Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. We got ACC Media Days going on in Charlotte in the world of college football, and the Big Ten finds themselves in Vegas. So a bunch of different college football storylines as we're less than 40 days away from the start of college football for the University of Utah. We will catch a break. We'll get to some more of the college football storylines coming up on the other side of a busy Tuesday drive, and it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. All right, we are live today at Beer Bar here in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. The address is 161 East, 200 South. We are right downtown. Very easy to find. It is your home for, quite frankly, any watch party. If you want to watch a game, if you want to watch RSL, if you want to watch Utah football, if you want to watch the Utah Jazz, college football, NFL Sundays, they do a great job here, so we'd love to see you. 161 East, 200 South. Come on by and say hi. They recently closed for a couple weeks to do some upgrades, and it turned out really nice. They've got brand new signage, an upgraded menu. Once upon a time, it was pretty much only burgers and brats. They've added a bunch of different sandwich options. They've got a breakfast sandwich you can get all day, turkey sandwich, pastrami, French dip, a new salad on the menu. And they brought over the cotton bottom garlic burger, which if you are a local, that is a classic here in the state of Utah. Ozzy Osbourne passed away today at the age, I think, of 76, if I saw that correctly. I'll tell you, if you're an Ozzy fan, we have a table full of Ozzy Osbourne fans celebrating with music in the background. I think the tequila's flowing. Porter, you're Ozzy Osbourne. I don't feel like Ozzy Osbourne would be in your wheelhouse. Are you a fan of his music, or maybe you were a fan of his reality TV show?
I was going to say it's not necessarily like my wheelhouse, but it was my father's, my family. So I've seen Ozzy Osbourne live. I was a designated driver to go to his concert, so I was, definitely watching the reality show with him and Sharon. Yeah, he definitely in my lexicon, but not necessarily because of his metal music, because that's not really my lane. But Ozzy, man, he kind of blurred those lines when it came to what people knew him for. Some of it was, yes, his music, and some of it was just his character.
Yeah, and randomly enough, I mean, I don't know if it was the first reality television show to follow a family around, but I feel like the Osbourne reality TV show that followed Ozzy, his wife, and their kids around, I think that predated the Kardashians, right? I mean, I feel like it was like the first one of the – I think Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson had one too.
Right.
But I felt like the Osbourne family reality show was like the birth of family-orientated reality TV shows where cameras follow you around all the time.
And it wasn't forced. I don't know if you've watched it. Yes, they script some stuff, especially later on. But if you watch those early editions of that show, man, it seemed very genuine from Ozzy's side, which is not necessarily what you always get from reality TV, right? Reality's not at face value. But it didn't really seem like the producers, the folks behind the scenes, had much say on what Ozzy was doing or saying. It seemed like a pretty good look into his life.
No doubt. So today, and it's been going on for a few days now, the ACC is holding their media days in Charlotte. The Big Ten holding their media days in Las Vegas. Interesting to consider exactly how the different commissioners approach their messaging. And I talked about this a little bit earlier. We were in Dallas for Big 12 Media Days, and, Brett Yormark, I think given the situation, Brett Yormark has done about as good of a job as you can expect. And he and Jim Phillips, who's the commissioner of the ACC, they find themselves in the same spot. And I couldn't help but be struck listening to Jim Phillips today address the group as the commissioner of the ACC, and how similar his messaging is to the messaging of Brett Yormark. Remember the alliance that once upon a time, the Big 12 ACC alliance, was thought to be a thing? That didn't last because nothing in college football does. A big topic today, scheduling. Jim Phillips talked about the ACC as of now has an 8-game conference schedule slate. Discussed at length the desire to maintain regional rivalries and conference rivalries, and if you're forced to go to 9 conference games, is there collateral damage with that dynamic? Well, the answer is yes, and we know that here. As a result of Utah and BYU taking a bit of a break because of Utah's, Pac-12 at the time scheduling, and quite frankly, the desire to maybe fill the non-con in a bit of a different way. And that was hotly debated around here. I have always been on record, and I will always be on record, saying that Utah and BYU should play in football every single year. There's some administrators that disagree. I think there are some administrators, maybe some at the school now, namely the University of Utah, and certainly some that were at the school before that I didn't feel like wanted that game to continue for a myriad of different reasons. And when it comes to the ability to schedule like a Florida home and home or a Michigan home and home, you get it, you understand it. And, you know, Jim Phillips also was not shy about taking shots at the Big Ten or the SEC. Certainly the SEC, who also has a little bit of a scheduling quirk that I've never been a fan of, that allows some of the best teams in the country to play cakewalk games like Week 9 or 10, which ultimately is a glorified bye. It's always felt a bit unfair to me. And Commissioner Phillips indicated that ultimately if the SEC goes to 9 conference games, the ACC would look to do the same. I don't know if that was a shot at them or ultimately believing that will never happen. Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, also spoke today and continued to advocate for this future college football playoff format, which would be heavy with automatic qualifiers. Now, the Big Ten, for a lot of people, has taken over as the best college football conference in America. They have the last 2 national champs with Ohio State and Michigan. They haven't had 2 straight national champs since World War II. You have to go back to 1940, 1942. They've got a legitimate national championship contender in Penn State this year. Michigan brings in one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the country. Ohio State, of course, is going to be really good. But ultimately, right now, the Big Ten has some leverage that Tony Petitti understands and he's flexing on, and you should. Basically, his belief, I'll just kind of summarize what Tony Petitti said today. The system that would be heavy with AQs, and that essentially would be the model you guys have heard of, which is 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten and 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC, leaving 2 automatic qualifiers for both the ACC and the Big 12. I don't know that I agree with Tony Petitti, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. When it comes to the preference of media members who do their jobs in a way that it sounds like they're just completely in bed with a conference, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what my preference would be. I always view things like this through the prism of what's best for the University of Utah, what's best for BYU, what's best for our in-state products, because, of course, that's our job as a sports talk radio show in the market. We're covering those a little bit more heavily than we would the national landscape or a Big 12 as a whole or the Big 10 as a whole or whatever. But Commissioner Petitti's assertions, he believes that it would enhance the regular season and minimize some of the scheduling differences between leagues, which I think is a big issue, and I have for years. So 16-team format, 4 AQs for Big Ten SEC. According to the commissioner, better connect the regular season and the postseason. Model 2 AQs, ACC Big 12, 1 for the highest rated group of 6 team, and then 3 at-large berths after that. So it seems to be the hot button topic right now because there are so many dissenting voices, and by the way, some dissenting voices that have manifested from the SEC that are catching a lot of people off guard. Now, Brett McMurphy is reporting that it has not even been decided that the CFP will expand to 16 next year. Of course, the Big 12 and the ACC are all for the 5+1 model. And again, the SEC, following the spring meetings, I mean, some people actually advocated for that as well. So I don't know if the Big Ten is entirely on an island, because you do hear voices in the SEC believe that's the way to go as well. A lot of this will be steeped in the influence of what the television executives want to see happen. There's just no way escaping that. And the other thing that the commissioner said today is that if they do not come to some sort of a consensus on what the 16-team model would look like, then there's a potential that the CFP stays at 12 for not just this year and next, but potentially beyond. Now, that could be Tony Petitti utilizing, again, the leverage and the momentum they have as a conference right now to negotiate these things with the momentum on their side in the moment. And a lot of this does come down to how paramount it is for some of the other conferences, namely the Big 12 and the ACC, to show well out of conference this year. And I believe the ACC has 26 out-of-conference games scheduled against other P4 opponents that aren't in the ACC, hence the out-of-conference. That was a bit redundant. But if you want to push back on what Tony Petitti says, if you want to push back on what Greg Sankey says, if you want to push back on what the Big 12 and the SEC are trying to do, which is capitalize on the moment where they're on the mountaintop, you got to go beat them. You got to beat them in head-to-head. You got to show that there are more than one or two teams in your conference that are worthy for CFP inclusion. I mean, that's why these results ultimately are paramount. And some of the non-con stuff, when you see Big 12 versus Big 10 or ACC versus SEC, if you can get some momentum on your side, and if you can win some of these head-to-heads, if you can have a couple of teams advance to the CFP and win a game or two and show that they belong, then the narrative will change. But the problem is right now, all of the power is where the Big Ten and the SEC find themselves because they have most of the national champs. They have most of the teams that television executives want on their TV show, and that ultimately drives a lot of this. And until some of those things can move over to the other side, I don't know that it matters what Jim Phillips or Brett Yormark has to say. I still think the power brokers reside in the two conferences that most people believe, if not all people believe, are the best conferences in college football. All right, we're live today at Beer Bar. It's 161 East, 200 South, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City. Come by and say hi. They've got the patios open with some misters, so you'll stay cool. They've got a bunch of beers on tap, canned bottled beer as well. If you're not a drinker, they've got mineral water, soda, non-alcoholic options. They've recently rebranded with a new menu that includes a bunch of different sandwiches as opposed to just the burgers and brats you're used to. Their fries are awesome. I've been smelling them all day. They've got brisket chili right now. How about that? And coming up this week, very special events. On Wednesday night of this week, they're going to have a pie and beer welcome party at 7 o'clock here at Beer Bar. They're going to have a couple of DJs, one inside, one outside. I'm sure they'll have a bunch of games on TV. You guys can come by and check that out. Then on Thursday is the Pie and Beer Day event. And it's a new event. They're going to do it at Smith's Ballpark, the old home of the Salt Lake Bees, who have since gone south. And they're going to have a kickball tournament that starts at 9 a.m. They're going to have pie and beer tasting. And it's open to the entire family. So if you're looking for something to do on Thursday, for some people it is Pioneer Day. For other people it is Pie and Beer Day. You celebrate the way you see fit. But if you're looking to participate, you can go to the ballpark on Thursday morning to gain entrance. $30 gets you 4 vouchers for a pie and beer tasting. If you're not into that, you just pay $5 for general admission. You can play a little kickball, and you can hang out with a lot of people celebrating coming up on Thursday. So we appreciate our friends at Beer Bar having us out today. All right, we got 2 hours in the books. We have 2 hours to go. Joe Cravens will join us coming up on the other side. We'll talk about the life and legacy of Frank Layden, as we've done over the past couple of weeks since Frank left us at the age of 93 a couple of weeks ago. Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune, and we'll go from there. Busy Tuesday drive, and it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're live today, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, on a steamy hot Utah Tuesday afternoon in July. At Beer Bar, it's 161 East, 200 South. 161 East, 200 South. We got the patios open and the misters are going. It actually feels really nice out there. We got an event coming up this week we'll tell you about. Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune will join us. We got about 2 hours left in the show. Good stuff with Stevenson Sylvester, who stopped by to talk Utah football. Pablo Mastroeni for the latest on RSL. But let's do a little basketball. A legend around these parts, former college coach, and now one of the more entertaining broadcasters you're ever going to hear. Joe Craven's good enough to give us some time on a Tuesday. Joe, happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
Thanks, Spence. I appreciate you having me on, and always happy to give you a little time here. I'm over in Denver getting ready to go to a Rockies game, so we got a little time before the pre-game festivities start, and so glad to spend a few minutes with you.
I appreciate the time, and of course, when Frank Layden passed away a couple of weeks ago at the age of 93. I was talking to Smitty about who I should have on the show. You're one of the first names he brought up. And, Joe, it's actually, obviously it's tremendously sad that we've lost Frank. There's certainly an element to this that feels like a blessing that he's not suffering anymore. But it's really been kind of a sweet experience for me to interview all these people over the past couple of weeks and learn all these anecdotes about who he was as a man, as a coach, as a husband, as a father. What was it like being Frank Layden's friend?
It was a very special friendship. Frank was, we'd been friends since I came to University of Utah in 1989. That was the year Majerus came, and I was the interim coach, and I think that's when that's when I first met Frank. So that, spans way over 30 years, and he just became just a wonderful friend, and I have given a lot of thought to his passing. And when we were together, we very rarely talked about basketball. As you know, he was a huge baseball fan. We talked a lot of baseball. He was a voracious reader. We were always the last several years, every time he'd see me, the first thing he would ask in that gravelly Brooklyn accent, "What are you reading?" And so I'd tell him what I was reading. We would exchange books and talk about books, and again talk a lot about baseball. But he endeared himself to I have two daughters. One reason we're in Colorado right now is my younger daughter works for the Colorado Rockies, and many years ago when she was, I don't know, probably 13 or 14. I was in Weber State when I was still working there in a press box at a football game with Frank, and we were talking. I said, "Coach, you're not going to believe this. I've got a little girl, a daughter, that just loves professional baseball, loves big league baseball." And we talked about it, and I said her favorite player is Willie Mays for some reason. And so the next time I saw Frank, there was another football game. He brought me this beautiful plaque with a picture or caricature, almost like you would see in Cooperstown, of Willie Mays, a list of all these records under it, and you turn it over, it had his signature and then a letter of authenticity. And he said, "Here, take that home to Shelby." And I said, "Coach, don't do that. That's a treasure. Don't give that to some young kid." And he said, "Nah, she'll like it." And she has it in her office with the Colorado Rockies right now. And he always asks, "How's your baseball daughter doing?" And then my other daughter's an actress in Chicago, and when she was majoring in theater at University of Utah, he went to several of her plays. One day he took my daughter, my baseball daughter I just talked about, and my wife and I to brunch at the Little American. Then we went to one of her plays I think that was on a Sunday. And so, our friendship for two old coaches had very little to do with basketball. It had to do with, him caring for my family and our other interests. And it was just a very, to me, I kind of forgot, it was a celebrity type friendship with Frank. Frank Layden's a celebrity, but he just became a family friend to us, and it was very, very special.
It's so many good things in there. I often wonder if Frank himself knew how, because you reference his celebrity, and certainly part of Frank's celebrity was his personality, because his one-liners, he was really funny, he was very witty, but also just the respect that he had in the basketball community as a coach, as a talent evaluator. I wonder if Frank himself, Joe, really fully realized how many people respected him the way they did.
I think Frank loved people. He loved being around people. He loved making people laugh. He loved doing nice things for people. And, I think Frank knew he was famous, but I don't think that mattered to him. I don't think he gave that much thought. I think, if you pinned him down, he'd say, former NBA Coach of the Year. Yeah, I was. I guess I don't know. I guess I'm famous. I don't know. But that never was a part of our relationship. And like I said, at times I had to kind of reflect and step back. That hey, this is Frank Layden. This is a celebrity. This is a big time dude. And we would. And he loved to exchange jokes. He gave me a great compliment. He said, "No one knows how to tell a joke around here but you." And I'd tell him, a joke, and he'd laugh. He'd steal it, and then I'd get on him because I'd hear later he'd retell my joke. People say, "Oh, Frank Layden told me this great joke," and I'd get on. I said, "You SOB, you're taking my joke, you're taking credit for him," and he laughed. He just thought that was the funniest thing, But it again, so special and so blessed that he and I had that relationship, as is many people, Spence, for so many years.
When it comes to Frank Layden, the basketball mind, as somebody who coached at a very high level in college, what sort of insight do you have there? It's funny, Joe, because I push back. I've heard people say on this show and elsewhere, like, Frank never got enough credit for the coach that he was. Well, people that knew gave Frank credit, because people that know. And yes, he went on to do dazzling dunks and basketball bloopers and became kind of a caricature in a way. I've always believed part of that was to sell the Utah Jazz to the country and make sure that the team had the exposure and a little bit of personality and character. But when I say Frank Layden, the basketball mind, the basketball coach, what comes to your mind?
I think more than X's and O's, when he would address one of my teams, or when I heard him speak when I was with Majerus at Utah, he would talk more about what it was, what made good teams, being a good teammate, giving to your teammates, and taking responsibility for your actions with your role on the team. And he talked much more about things like that, the makeup, the intangibles of being a good team and what it took, than he did about, hey, you got a screen over here and you got to execute that. Now, if you really wanted to talk to him, and every once in a while when I was still coaching, I'd say, what did you do against the press? And we would talk a little bit like that, but it was more about the makeup of a good team, the personality, if you will, of a good team than it was X's and O's. And of course, once you did pin him down to talk at X and O's, obviously he was very impressive. He had a really good basketball mind. But I think, and for my money, his feelings and his thoughts of what it took to be a good team, regardless of the X and O's, I think was where he was very special.
And it just felt like, the term players coach sometimes can be cliched and sometimes can maybe be overused. But I don't know that we could find a player, Joe, that played for him, that didn't love him, that didn't look up to him as a father figure. I mean, one of the most fascinating, because, when I got into this industry, partially I was encouraged by Frank, so I owe him a lot, actually.
Yes.
But I decided, like, as much as I can have him on, I am going to have him on. And it's really turned out to be a little serendipitous, because I have hours and hours of conversations I've had with Frank that I'll always be able to go back and listen to. And one of the stories he told me was about a player named John Drew, who I know you know, Joe, and old school Jazz fans certainly know, but maybe not younger Jazz fans, or maybe Jazz fans that weren't necessarily connected to the team back in the 80s. John Drew was a tremendous talent who just couldn't get it figured out off the court. And, you know, Frank told me the story of John coming to him and informing him that he had sold the rights to his future pension for a couple of $1,000s in order to, you know, just get the fix that he needed because he was in such a bad spot. And as Frank is telling me the story, he's getting emotional. And as Frank is telling me the story, he's walking me through how many times he tried to reach John. And throughout the course of his retirement, how often he would check in on him. So we talk about the John and Carl stuff and the, you know, drafting of these legendary players. I feel like he viewed all of his players almost as like extended sons, if that makes sense.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt. I think Frank was one of those unique people who got in. We talked a lot about this, that I just recently, just a couple weeks before losing Frank, lost my high school coach who was 91 years old. And
oh, sorry to hear that.
I have always said I got into coaching to have an impact on kids' lives like my high school coach had on me. And and Frank and I talked about that. And you know, and he said, you go down that road, you want to have a positive impact on everyone that plays for you. But you look back and you know that you did on some, and that's very rewarding. But the ones that kind of stick with you are the ones that you didn't, that you just couldn't, you know, you didn't feel like you made their life better, or you didn't make them better, or that fought coaching, that just couldn't kind of get on the same level with you. And you know, we talked about it. He said, you know, you revel in the fact of the guys you touched, and you know you touched and are very loyal to you, but the ones that got away, so to speak, that you just felt like you just kind of spent time with, those are the ones that kind of stick with you a little bit longer. And he and I both agreed that you know, that does, it bothers you. You know, you wish you could have done more, but sometimes you can't reach everyone, and you can't have, or you don't have that positive effect on everyone that you coach. But I have no doubt that's what, because we talked about it. He told me he got into coaching to touch people, not to be the NBA Coach of the Year, or not to be famous, but to make the world better, to make people better.
You know, and the other thing, while we're kind of in this space of the guys who played for him, and look, Scotty deserves a lot of credit here. Scott Layden as a talent evaluator, and every front office in pro basketball evaluating talent takes swings and misses. But, Joe, his hit rate in the draft, I mean, we talk about John and Carl, but it's Mark Eaton, it's Thurl Bailey, it's Bobby Hansen, it's, you know, trades for Adrian Danley. And, you know, if you go down the list of players who Frank identified as potential really great players, he hit a lot. So I don't know that he gets enough credit for his ability to evaluate talent, you know?
Oh, I think that's a very valid point. You just named a pretty good list of guys that he seemed like he had a great feel for, and what they would become, and how he projected them. And there's just a long list that you didn't mention that maybe didn't go on to stardom, but were very solid NBA players that he had a lot to do with. So I think he was a very solid X and O tactician guy. I think he had a great feel for people, and kind of almost a second sense about how to project those people to the next level, which for him was the NBA.
You know, you reference his love of baseball, and it was always fun to be at the ballpark and run into Frank and Barbara, and obviously the seventh inning stretch to take me out to the ball game, legendary. I wonder if we went a little deeper. I know he was a Dodgers fan and told great stories of Ebbets Field. I wonder if you could illuminate me further on just how deep that love ran, kind of where it was steeped from, and what the game of baseball meant to Frank Layden.
Well, one of his great stories, and I at his funeral or his service there at the Catholic Church in Salt Lake, when Scott got up and was talking about his dad, and he said, "I'm going a little off script here." He said, "Let's sing Dad's favorite song," and a one and a two. Of course, everyone knew where it was going, and we sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." That was special. And one of his great stories was about seeing Jackie Robinson play his first game. He probably told you that, Spence. And the funny part of that was he went out to lunch with some high school friends, and they went back to school, and he went to Ebbets Field. It was Jackie Robinson's first game, and Frank told this story so well. He said, "I'm standing there at a railing, and an older gentleman was standing there with me, and we're talking, and the older gentleman says, 'Now, which one is this Robinson guy that everyone's making the fuss about?' And Frank said, I looked at him and said, 'Well, we should be able to pick him out, don't you think?' And, of course, I mean, Frank told it took Frank about 15 minutes to tell that story, but it was just a terrific story. I think his love for baseball and for basketball is growing up in a neighborhood at a time like a lot of us did, him before you and I, Spence, that, there wasn't a whole lot else to do. In the summertime, no one had air conditioning. No one had, a computer or cell phones, and you just went out and played and entertained yourself. And he talked about playing stickball to me and, in the neighborhoods there in Brooklyn. And I think he just grew up. He led the city of Brooklyn in scoring in basketball and in home runs as a catcher his senior year. And I think his love for baseball just came from, playing as a kid and then playing through high school and entertaining himself as a young man in Brooklyn, where they didn't have a whole lot of entertainment going on.
Upon his passing, Joe, as you know, he and Barbara had been married for 68 years. And, watching those two over the course of my I don't really have a memory of life where Frank wasn't involved in my life. I was young when my father was here. And, so watching those two over the years and just how good they were to me, how good they were to my son, how good they were to everybody, and ultimately how good they were to each other. I wonder what your thoughts are on Frank Layden, the husband, 68 years with Barbara.
Well, it's a textbook, I'd tell you, and he would tell you the best assistant coach he ever had in his life was Barbara, and she was. I'm a big gardener. You can take the boy out of southern Indiana, but you can't take the southern Indiana out of the boy. And I grow a lot of tomatoes, and I used to bring Frank and Barbara tomatoes and cucumbers, and Barbara just loved that. I mean, she just loved those fresh vegetables, out of my garden. And she was always just so gracious, and she loved going to my daughter's plays, and that's the reason his passing was such a impact on my family, not just on me. I mean, I told you a couple of stories about, both daughters had nothing to do with basketball or X's and O's, but Barbara was just she was the rudder on that ship, he would tell you. I mean, she was just such a beautiful and gracious woman. And he probably told you this. Al McGuire introduced them, is how they started dating. And he liked to tell that story. And, he's one of those guys that some of these stories you'd heard a time or two, but they were still very entertaining. I'd long to hear some more of his stories if I could.
Certainly. Joe, before I set you loose, just away from Frank for a moment, I just wonder what a college coach like you, who coached in the game for a number of years, kind of makes of where we find ourselves with this sport. And, in-state, BYU hires Kevin Young. BYU is flexing their NIL muscles, and they've got a program right now with a lot of momentum. And then Alex Jensen has been hired to coach his alma mater, and I don't know that Utah has the power of the purse that BYU does right now. Hopefully they can get some support because I very much like Al and I want him to succeed. But when you consider things like a lot of these players will be making more money than any of their assistant coaches, and the ability to transfer schools if you're not happy with your lot. What do you make of where we find the college game? And certainly would be interested in your take on where we find both Utah and BYU.
Well, I've always been a proponent or a long proponent that players should be compensated, Spence, but not to the level that it is now. I think, and unfortunately, I think, the cows are out of the barn, and we ain't getting them back in the barn, and it just has grown in a very short time with the transfer portal and with the NIL money into something that is totally unrecognizable for people like you and I and people of our generation. But I think all the valuable life lessons I learned playing basketball in college and I back when the NIL was first starting, people said, well, what do you think about this? And I played at Texas Arlington, and I think I'm still the 676th all-time leading scorer there. Maybe I'm not sure, but I thought I was pretty damn lucky. I was on full scholarship. We were flying around, and we were eating pretty good, and I was chasing a few cheerleaders here and there. And I thought, God, how could it get any better than this? And I'd go back to Indiana and I'd work in the summer and I'd make, $800 to $1,000, and that was my spending money when I went back to school. And, that summer job, that did a lot for who I am today, for, the life lessons, understanding what it's like to work hard. And I think we're raising a whole generation of athletes who I'm not saying they don't work hard, but if all of a sudden you get out of college and you've been making, say you're just a sixth or seventh guy and you're only making $100,000 and you get a degree in communications and you go to work for the Colorado Rockies and they say, yeah, we're going to hire you, starting salary $60,000. I mean, how's a kid? Well, wait a minute now. God, I've been making, well, I don't know that we're other long-term that we're doing those athletes any favor. And, who doesn't care, though, is the fan base. They just go fight, win. Let's win. How many did you win this year? Are we going to win the championship? Things like that from an ex-coach, I don't think we're doing, again, the athletes any service. But I don't know about you. No one called me and asked me my opinion on this before they started all this. So I don't like where it is. I can't change it. You can't change it. I'm just going to ride along for a while on TV and until they quit calling, and we'll go play golf.
That sounds like a good life. How do you like the broadcasting thing? You're very good at it. It's very entertaining. You have a very unique approach. Are you enjoying the gig?
I am, Spence. I am very, very. Next year will be my 20th year in broadcasting. I was very blessed, after my college coaching career ended. I didn't skip a beat. I got right into broadcasting, and I'm very lucky. In fact, next year, if you count 30 years of coaching, 4 years of playing, and 20 years of broadcasting, will be my 54th year involved with college basketball at some level. And I feel not a day goes by I don't think, I'm pretty damn lucky and pretty blessed with that. I don't ever take that for granted. But I tell people without a doubt, the greatest thing about broadcasting is I'm undefeated over 19 years. I hadn't lost a game, and some of those people who didn't think I was very smart as a coach think, boy, God, you're pretty smart all of a sudden as a broadcaster. So I'm really enjoying it. I have enjoyed it, and again, I'm going to ride that horse for as long as I can and until I finally fall off of it, I guess.
Well, like I said, it's tremendously entertaining. I've long been a fan of the broadcast, and I really appreciate your time and perspective today, Joe. So stay safe, be well, and we'd love to get you on soon, okay?
Thanks, Vince. I want to take a second. I've got a golf buddy who is out of town up in Oregon, a long-time listener and fan of yours, Bruce Stevens, I want to say hello to and hope he's doing well up there. He and his wife have left Utah to escape the heat, but he is a loyal listener of yours and a loyal friend of mine. And I appreciate you having me on, and I'd like to do it again sometime.
That's very kind, sir. Joe Craven's longtime college coach, Utah, Idaho, Weber State. He's with the Mountain West Conference as a broadcaster now, and lifelong friends with the legendary Frank Layden. We're live today at Beer Bar, 161 East, 200 South. They have rebranded. We got some new signage. It's no longer just brats and burgers. They've got the Cotton Bottom Garlic Burger, a local staple, a breakfast sandwich you can get all day long, pastrami, turkey, French dips, salads. It's a new menu. And they've got a fun event that we'll tell you about coming up on the other side. But there's a celebrity sighting. Andy Larson is here. If you've ever wanted to meet the legend Andy Larson, come on by, 161 East, 200 South. Are you willing to take pictures and sign autographs? He said yes. He said yes. So before we catch a break, we'll bring in Ryan from the Dish Pros in a moment. But Andy's going to roll by. Kyle Filipowski named MVP of Jazz Summer League. Kind of a downtime for NBA news. His thoughts on Dame back in Portland. RSL drops a result. But the summer transfer window opens on Thursday. We're hearing at least 3 or 4 additions. So Andy's going to join us coming up next. But let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Give him a call at 801-424-DISH and save a bunch of money on a bunch of different things. What's going on, Ryan?
Spence, this is a very good time right now to make the switch. Guys, Dish has a killer offer right now. They've got the same 2-year offer we've been touting for the past couple of years. 2 years with the credits. The price is guaranteed not to change. And guys, this price is actually at minimum $30 a month cheaper than DirecTV or cable. A lot of times we see it higher, $60, $80, $100 a month. Plus, right now, if you get set up, you get 3 months of the service for free. Plus, we'll throw in Showtime and Paramount Plus free for 4 months and dinner at JCW's. There's never been a better time. Pick up the phone, get dialed up so you have all your games. Remember, the Hopper will auto-record your team's games for you. It'll auto-record the locals. It'll auto-hop commercials. Plus, it has all of the streaming apps available in the system. It's like a channel. It makes it simple, so it's all in one place. That's really what you want. Simple, easy TV where you can have access to whatever you want, have the biggest DVR. We'll get you the best deal and have you installed as early as next day. Plus, ask about our internet solutions. You name it, we have it. Even the companies you would probably least likely expect us to have internet available for. I can't mention the names on the radio, but if you call us up, I'll tell you all that we have available. In fact, we'll look up your address and we'll let you know the prices and what we can do for you. And most likely, it's going to be a better service because there's a lot of really good services now available, and also a lot cheaper. Guys, internet is cheap as $20 a month. So if you're overspending, you're not getting the service you need, either TV or internet, call us today, 424-DISH. It's 801-424-3474.
All right, Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune, joins us coming up on the other side of a quick break on a Tuesday edition of The Drive. So keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, we're live today at Beer Bar, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. It's 161 East, 200 South. Coming up on Wednesday night, they're having a pie and beer day party here at Beer Bar. And then on Thursday, which is Pioneer Day for some, and then for a different subset of folks, it is Pie and Beer Day. They're going to have an event at the ballpark, at the old home of the Salt Lake Bees at the ballpark, Smith's Ballpark, where starting at 9 o'clock, there will be a kickball tournament. And then Nick Raimondo is putting together a kickball team. They're going to have pie and beer tasting. To gain access, to show up at the ballpark at about 9 a.m. $30 gets you 4 different samples of pie and beer. If you're not into that, you can pay $5 for entry and come hang out. I feel like our next guest might celebrate Pie and Beer Day on occasion. Andy Larson, how are you, sir?
You know, last year, I'm great. Last year they had a Pioneer Day, maybe a Pie and Beer Day bar crawl down Main Street.
Okay.
So me and a couple friends went down Main Street, tried these pie-themed cocktails at each bar.
Okay.
And then went to the Bees game afterwards when, you know, the Bees were a relevant team in Salt Lake City. So,
Indeed. Those were the days. Those were the days.
It was a lot nicer then. So I had a great time last year, and honestly, I like the idea of going back to the ballpark again, even though no baseball is a bummer.
You are a man that participates in several recreational sports activities. Do you play any kickball?
I've only tried kickball once. It's harder than it looks, dude. Like,
Sure.
It's just hard not to get the ball popped up,
Right.
But I've played kickball only once, but it's not like I've never done a kickball league, even though I've kind of wanted to.
So apparently Nick Raimondo and Kyle Beckerman are putting together a team for this event on Thursday. That feels a little unfair, does it not?
Yeah, they got to be real good at kicking. The closest I've gotten to that is playing Darren Williams in his dodgeball tournament. Do you remember that? Like 10 years ago?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I got together a team of bloggers, and you know we looked like a team of bloggers.
Sure.
We were athletically a team of bloggers,
Uh-huh.
and it was Darren Williams and Ronnie Price and friends, absolutely kicking the trash out of us.
That feels unfair.
In dodgeball.
That feels unfair.
And, yeah, but you know, that's what Nick Raimondo, Kyle Beckerman, kickball is. I feel like it's going to be.
I agree with you. And you know what? I do miss the Bees downtown, man. I've not been able to make it out south, and I'm not going to tell you I was at every game, but I used to go to 4 or 5 a year, and every time I consider, I'm like, I'm not driving out there. I miss the Bees downtown.
Yeah, it was a great option, you know. Like, I feel the same. I did go out to the ballpark in Daybreak, and look, it's a good ballpark. Like,
Sure,
I
sure,
like what they've done out there.
sure.
There's just nothing around it, you know. It can't be part of a day when it is, you know, and they are going to be adding stuff during the summer. They're adding a movie theater out there and restaurants and so on and so forth. Like, it's just the first step, but it is, you know, it's 50th West. It's way out there compared to downtown. It's just, yeah, it's harder to do it. So, honestly, me and my friends, again, are talking about going up to more Ogden Raptors games because if you look at it on a train, front runner 40 minutes, probably about 40 minutes down to Daybreak. I kind of like the Ogden Raptors vibe.
Yeah.
Very like, you know,
Yeah.
The lowest minor league, but it's there's stuff built up around that ballpark in a way there's not yet down in Daybreak.
Now, of course, you know, the Millers' intent is to bring Major League Baseball to the market, which obviously, if that's the end game, you understand the decision-making process. Do you follow this at all, the potential of baseball? So what do you think of the latest developments? It does feel like it's us in Nashville whenever the time comes.
Yeah, that was a report that came out this week, and look, I think that's been the case since the Millers kind of unveiled their plan. I mean, they have what these other markets don't, which is a ready-made billionaire owner to go in and just take it and a place to put the park and widespread both state and local governmental support, right? Like, they have kind of all the things that Major League Baseball commissioners and sports owners are going to be looking at to determine where that franchise goes. So I think, like, Nashville is a shoe-in, right? Like, it makes just too much sense for market reasons, for tradition reasons, for a whole bunch of different reasons. And then it's, if they do really want to do one East Coast team and one West team, it's between Salt Lake and Portland, in my view, and maybe Sacramento. Maybe you talk about an Oakland team again, but those are harder cases than what Salt Lake City has to offer, and I think that's why you hear about Salt Lake City being, you know, a leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, of teams that if Major League Baseball does expand, when they expand, that we could really see one here in Salt Lake.
Is there any concern, and maybe you've done some data on this, it certainly feels like we're growing at an alarming rate. I had to drive down to Linden today, And every time I drive down south, I'm amazed at a couple things. First of all, just how much traffic there is in transit. Second of all, just how much it's grown out there. So population, economic support, corporate sponsors and such. Any concern that if Major League Baseball becomes a reality, suddenly in a span of 4 or 5 years, we went from the Jazz and RSL, but suddenly, 3 of the 4 major sports are in our market. Any concern with enough people with economic ability to buy tickets and corporate sponsorship support and such?
Yeah, look, the Millers say they've done that research and they still feel confident in Major League Baseball being able to work here. They also have not really released that research. You know what I mean? They've kind of kept it close to the vest, and so I'm really skeptical of whenever someone pays for research and then doesn't show you how the methodology or how it works,
sure,
and then tells you something that it found. I want to know the behind the scenes on that, right? It would be one of these smaller markets, certainly from a corporate dollars point of view, from a major, a population point of view. I think it's a deserving market from a population point of view, but it would be one of the smaller markets with 3 professional teams, certainly. And that being said, you look at how the Utah Hockey Club has gone, right? And I don't think that this was really a hockey market before last year, and it has been embraced from an attendance point of view, right? And so I think that would probably be pretty similar to what would happen with baseball, as I think Utahns do, as Ryan Smith says, they do get behind these kind of things, and baseball, fits in that nice spot in a marketplace where there's not a whole lot to do in the summer beyond RSL games on the weekends.
Well, we're in the space of discussing Miller properties. Let's just move over to the soccer club, and the summer window opens on Thursday. Pablo joined the show earlier. We had Kurt on last week, Jason the week before. And barring something completely wild, it does feel like we're going to see 3 or 4 additions. Pablo called it a 9 and then like a 9.5, so 2 players in the attack. He actually referenced an addition to the back line as well. Obviously, we've all learned over the years in MLS with RSL, certain things get in the way, and suddenly a striker doesn't want to live here or whatever it is. So we'll wait till they're across the line. They were unbeaten in 5. They were done in by an unbelievable left peg strike by Cincinnati over the weekend. But how you feeling about the form, and should these additions get across the line, what sort of team do you think we'll see the rest of the way?
It's funny, I thought among the 6 games, the last 6 RSL games, that Saturday was their best performance of the 6.
I agree.
And they were just playing a team that was way, way better than them.
Yeah.
And in the other 5 games, they were playing teams that are at the bottom of the standings, right? And so, to me, as an RSL fan, that's who I want RSL to be. I want RSL to be Cincinnati, and I want them to spend that much money to go get an Evander or whoever it is that makes those players that make a difference. And I hope they do that in this transfer window. But I do have to say, it was clear with as much possession and as much attacking verve as RSL had on Saturday that there were 1 or 2 weak points that ended those attacks, right? And we know who those are. That's number 9 and it's number 10, frankly, right? And so if you can replace those spots with better players, then all of a sudden this RSL attack looks really good. And the defense has looked really quite good over the last couple of months. So, yeah, all of a sudden you are one of those better teams. You still don't have the star power of even a Cincinnati, certainly not an Inter Miami, not an LAFC, but you can be reasonably very competitive in MLS, and I'll be happy if that's what ends up happening.
How do you feel the partnership? Because, we should acknowledge that Diogo's been better. Has he been DP better? Probably not. You want more for a player that you're spending that money on. And if we're honest, he could not have been worse. But he has been better. And I was listening to some off-the-cuff random soccer podcast. They expressed their concern that, I'll use an NBA term, redundancy is kind of seeped into NBA nomenclature, and Diego and Diogo, maybe they're creative in similar ways that won't allow them to play off of each other. I don't know a rip about that. When you watch those two, what do you see?
I think there can be some of that, but I don't think that it is – I don't think that's the problem, right? I didn't see enough out of Diogo that was hey, when Diego Luna was with the U.S. men's national team, that Diogo was really stepping up his game. He became an average MLS midfielder, right? And again, that's just not good enough for designated player money. So, ultimately, I think that's if RSL were to be really aggressive, frankly, that's a spot where you use your one-time annual get-out-of-jail-free card. I don't think they'll do that because they haven't been that kind of team, but like that's a clear spot where you can upgrade salary and cap-wise. And, you know, the good news about where RSL is right now is that they are super flexible. So if they choose to, they can be really aggressive and go out and actually get those targeted pieces that they need. It's just whether or not they do it in this transfer window that, you know, opens up on Thursday.
And I do think one more thing here, and then we'll move on to some Jazz and some NBA. You know, I worked for the Millers for 7 years. Obviously, my father's history with them is well documented. And I had a good experience with them. I think this transfer window is a good opportunity for them to really garner some goodwill among a fan base that, if we just call it how it is just skeptical of ownership. And I get it. I understand it. I mean, obviously, there's been 4 different iterations of RSL ownerships, and we could weigh the pros and cons of all of them. I'm a little bit biased, so I like to think the initial one was the best one. But
I think a lot of RSL fans would agree with you.
Okay, well, but you know, the pockets weren't deep enough to spend the way that you need to spend, and now I feel like the pockets are deep enough. So I don't know if there's pressure on them to write checks, but it feels like they have a chance to show a fan base that's skeptical about ownership that, yes, we are here to spend, we are here to win.
Agreed. And so this is, the market knows the Millers, but I think the market does have that like concern about the Millers in the back of their head. It's like, hey, you know, and the NBA is a very different market and was very different 20 years ago and so on and so forth. But like, the Millers for so long resisted paying the luxury tax and resisted going that next extra step. And I don't know if that next extra step was really ever going to win them the championship, but they never took it until really the final year, right? Like the final year when they did go into the luxury tax for Donovan and Rudy and then they sold the team immediately to Ryan Smith, right? So are they willing to spend, not just as an average MLS team or, you know, where RSL spends right now in like 25th in MLS, but are they willing to be in the top 10? Are they willing to go out and try to get, you know, that game-changing kind of like Evander kind of prospect or player that actually does distribute and create chances and make you into a juggernaut? Because RSL does have so many other cool pieces on great contracts that the team has added in. Like, yeah, it's an opportunity for them to make a statement in the market that they matter.
All right, moving over to the Utah Jazz. Let me start with more of a macro, big picture question. You know, this is now year 4 since they moved on from the last iteration. Mitchell, Gobert, Dennis Lindsey, Quinn Snyder, we know the group. And it was, by all accounts, a very successful run under that umbrella. No championship, playoff failures, extreme playoff failures if we're honest, but a good, fun team that won a lot of games, that inspired a lot of hope around here for the first time that maybe we're moving in the right direction. New ownership comes in, they break it down. Ultimately, at this point, I think it's been a clunky rebuild, as I've said, and I think that's putting it kindly. So before we dig into specifics, now that we have a 4th-year sample size coming up of new ownership, new front office, how do you analyze the job they've done?
I mean, it's hard because I think they have replaced some of those front office figures this summer, right? Because, frankly, they didn't do well enough. I think, look, they recognized that they weren't very adept at basketball talent recognition, and that's why you saw them make the changes in the scouting department and why they went with Austin Ainge, who they feel like is a good basketball evaluator. Now, obviously, there's probably a nepotism part of that as well, but like they think Austin is a basketball guy in a way that Justin Zanuck came from an agency background, doesn't necessarily have the basketball talent background that they feel Austin Ainge does. And they felt like that was kind of missing under the Danny Ainge world, who, you know, Danny, again, they think Danny Ainge is a very good basketball talent evaluator, but maybe doesn't have all the time in the world to spend on evaluating college prospects on an individual level to try to get like the best 29th pick possible. So I think, yes, the first 3 years has been very clunky. I think you can point to bad drafting decisions, or at least like not maybe as strong as you would hope for. And then I think you can point to essentially like lack of clarity in terms of what are you doing with John Collins, what are you doing with Colin Sexton, what are you doing with Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, so on, the veterans. That's when, you know, when I went to Vegas last week for Summer League, that's what I heard from people over and over again is I didn't understand the Jazz's strategy until now.
Yeah.
And so we'll see, you know, what happens in the Austin Ainge world with new scouts and Carlos Boozer and Avery Bradley are in the forefront, right? Like, we'll see what they do. they don't have a long track record of scouting success. These are new, just players out of the NBA who we don't know if they are good scouts or not, but we will find out if. And obviously, what happens with Ace Bailey, what happens with Walter Clayton, and so on and so forth. Like, and even the next couple of drafts will determine whether, in the next 3 to 4 years, the Jazz build up and all of a sudden are exciting Donovan Mitchell, or if they are in a really long, decade-long Kings-like rebuild.
And it's interesting to consider, what I guess I'll refer to as the prior front office structure with a guy like Zanuck, who's respected by everybody across the landscape of the NBA, and a guy like Danny, who has a track record that indicate, yes, he can do this. I would get asked about it all the time, and I've known the Angels my entire life, and I consider them friends in a way. There's a wall because I'm a media member. That's always kind of a weird thing. But I just don't think, and look, if we're fair, Danny was pretty clear when Ryan came to him with the opportunity where he's like, look, man, I'm in my 60s now. I'm not saying this is exactly what he said, but the feel was kind of like, I'm in my 60s now. I'm not into the grind the way I was when I was building the Celtics. And I just wonder if Ryan underestimated that dynamic where I don't know that Danny was grinding on tape at night. I think he was looking to make a tee time at Riverside, and then, no, he's present. He's at games and workouts and such. But I wonder if we would have seen something different if Danny just was younger and more energized to do the job the way he did in Boston.
See, and I don't know that that's the case because Danny actually did make some weird drafting choices in Boston.
He did,
too, right?
He did, yeah.
Someone on Twitter, and I wish I could actually say the right person, but did an analysis of all the GMs over the last 20 years to find out who had drafted the best and who had drafted the worst.
Mm-hmm.
The GM who's drafted the most busts in the NBA over the last 20 years is Danny Ainge.
Oh, interesting.
So Danny Ainge won, and then actually it's Sam Presti, number 2, which is funny because Sam Presti just won the title,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The Oklahoma City, with so many picks, has had so many busts as well.
Sure, yeah.
Boston's a little bit like that, too, where they had so many picks from the trades that they've made. And they have certainly a ton of hits at the top, but also some kind of weird, weird picks in the teens and 20s. And so, look, it's an up and down thing. Everyone has successes and failures, but I will say this for Danny. I expected him to be less involved than he has been over the last 3 years. And I'll go to, a Stars game in January that there's no reason for him to be at. The best player on the floor is Elijah Harkless, right? Mm-hmm. And he's there. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't expect that at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I think it's less, imagine if Danny Ainge had been involved and more, imagine if you had more people with a wider range of opinions and more ability to scout well, I think, that maybe you would have made better drafting decisions.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And a while ago after Danny took the job, we went down the list, and certainly there's the Jaylen Browns and the Jason Tatums. There's also guys that never even played in pro basketball that were first-round picks made by the Boston Celtics. So if we move over now to the new front office, I'm using air quotes, a new approach where Austin is the primary decision maker, I actually kind of like what he's done so far when it comes to, okay, we're not going to get a first-round pick for Colin Sexton. But fine, okay, move on. The value play for John Collins isn't great. Fine, okay, we're going to move. To me, he's pulled the ripcord in a way that maybe it felt like they were sitting on their hands a little bit and has cleared the deck for young players to play, and I just don't see any other approach. It feels like this is the only thing they can do.
Yeah, we talked to them when he was first hired and throughout this draft process and even a little bit in Summer League, they kicked the tires on doing more to try to go and do more, and they found that there wasn't anything out there. And so, yeah, and then I give Austin credit, was okay, if there's nothing else out there, then we should not try to go out there and be a 28-win team that wins 18 games based on the fact that we've sat our starters, right? Because what happened last year was out of this world tanking in a pretty gross way, if we're honest, right?
I agree.
Yeah. And so this, at least, you give the young players some time. And we'll see, I want to see more of Ace Bailey, and I want to see more of Kyle Filipowski, and I want to see more of, Cody Williams and all the kind of the guys they have. And you can really learn about them. I think one of the things we learned last year, frankly, is that those young guys probably aren't starters in the NBA, but they could still be. And at least you're going in a direction where, I thought for the first 2 years of the rebuild, it was very questionable. What is the actual goal here?
Yeah, and I think the league was kind of looking around going, what exactly are they doing? And look, we can be revisionist historians about whether or not they got enough for Mitchell and what you think of marketing. And will any of the Cavs or T-Wolves draft assets turn out to be decent, because they're both really good. But if we move forward into the here and now, what would you say to Jazz fans that feels like the most exciting possibility of this year right now, not 5-6 years down the road? Like what should get fans to show up this season, even though we know they're not going to win at a high clip?
I mean, it's Ace Bailey, right? Like, to me, that is the number one story of this season. And not just for, like, I think there are some interesting parts about what happened at the draft and does he want to be here and how much does he play and so on and so forth and how good is he really. But, like, for me, just he has a level of potential and talent that no one else on the Jazz roster has. Full stop. Not even Larry Markkinen, right? Like, I don't think it's likely Ace Bailey becomes as good as Larry Markkinen, but he has the potential to be a better player, to be a multi-time All-Star, to be an All-NBA guy because of his athleticism and because of his ability to shoot the ball. Has so much to figure out, but there's some clay there that can be molded in a really interesting way if I'm watching Jazz games this year. And then, you're looking for other pieces around him to be not stars, but useful role players on the next good Jazz team. You know, players that could play on the Indiana Pacers, right? Like, or the Oklahoma City Thunder. Players who can defend, players who can be versatile scorers, players who work in a 5-man unit rather than just trying to get themselves as many points as possible, right? Like, the things that work in modern NBA basketball, I want to see from the rest of the Jazz's young players.
You know, it's interesting with Frank's passing, and Frank Layden, who left us a couple weeks ago at the age of 93, it has made me nostalgic in a way where you look at that 25-year stretch where every year they were good, every year they were going to the playoffs, they were competing and winning division titles, they were competing and winning conference championships a couple of different times. And I heard somebody who I respect say it's no longer possible to do that in Salt Lake in the modern day and age of the NBA. You cannot replicate that anymore. That was a lightning in a bottle, once-in-a-lifetime generation. And then I look at the aforementioned Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers and the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Milwaukee Bucks, the Denver Nuggets, teams that exist in cities where we can be a bit analogous. Are some of those cities bigger than us? Yes. Denver has the NFL, Minnesota, we could keep going, Indiana and all that stuff. But if I just ask you point blank, is it possible for this new ownership group and this new front office to replicate what the old ownership group did in the old front office to build a legitimate contending team for that long? Is it possible now in the ecosystem of pro basketball?
I don't think it can be 20 or 25 years anymore, and I think that's across the league, right? Like, the Lakers haven't been good for the last 25 years, right? Like, they had the Lonzo Ball bad era, right?
Nick Van Exel, Eldon Campbell Lakers, yep.
Yeah, I mean, and the New York Knicks, as you know, have not been a good team for a long time. It doesn't really matter, I think, what market you're in. I think it is just that the speed of the sine waves of, if you will, of the NBA has sped up. And so, yes, your windows are now much shorter than they used to be. They are 5 years long rather than 10, 15, 20 years long. You don't have players staying in the same place. And even when you do it, let's say a Giannis or a Jokic, you know, you're talking about an 8 to 10-year window. I don't think you're talking about a 20-year window anymore. Even the Oklahoma City Thunder, obviously, were bad 2 years ago. The Pacers are going to be pretty average next season without Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner. Like, it's just because of injuries and because of the fact that the contracts are so much shorter now, you don't have the opportunity to build a multi-decade-long contender. That being said, we also know from the past 5-10 years is even though you are a small market, you can win at the highest level. You can be the Thunder, you can be the Spurs, you can be Denver, you can be Milwaukee, right? Like, you can be the best team in the NBA even if you are in the smallest market in the NBA.
Cody Williams, you know, you saw it live. I watched on TV. His body looks better. It looks like he's working out. If we get 50% of what Jalen is, you know, because he's so good, I feel like it would be a win. So while it was clear that as a rookie he was just not ready, did anything you see in Summer League, whether it was his improved physique or his improved play, give you confidence he can be a legit rotational piece for Will this year?
I feel like if I was eating 4,800 calories a day like he is, I would have gained more weight than Cody Williams
Fair
has.
enough.
But so there's still so much work left to do on the body, and he looks like 5 pounds heavier to me. It doesn't look like a huge difference. Like unlike Taylor Hendricks, for example, who looks like 30 pounds bigger. He is huge.
Yeah.
But I think driving to the rim and or making that open three. That was, he struggled with both shooting and the driving piece last year. It's summer league defenders, and I thought he struggled in a number of other ways. Frankly, like I didn't love the rebounding, I didn't love the passing, I didn't love the pick and roll play, I didn't love the ISO play. But in terms of his ability to respond well in catch and shoot or closeout, driving against closeout situations, that looked a lot better to me, and that is like useful for him to be a fifth best player in a lineup and be additive rather than subtractive like he was last year.
Is there anything Isaiah does better than Walter Clayton Jr.?
Yeah, passing. I mean, by a lot. He's a much better passer.
Who do you think grabs that starting job?
Walter Clayton Jr. I mean, like, not immediately, but
yeah.
I think they give it to Isaiah to begin the year, and then, Walt earns it over the course of some development time in the same way we've seen with, honestly, 5 different point guard situations for the Jazz in the last 10 years, whether that's Trey Burke and Howell Neto or Dante Exum or even Keontae taking from Taylor Horton-Tucker, right? Like Shelvin Mack. I mean, I can go down the list of like pretty average point guards who have started for the Jazz just because they were taking over from someone who had one weird bad flaw. If Isaiah can't shoot the ball, and he did not shoot the ball in Summer League, then it just makes too much sense to put Walter Clayton out there, space the floor for everybody else, and see what that does for your offense.
Yeah, it was disappointing, because, and Will was asked about this, and we'll end on this, with his postseason media availability, kind of what's your checklist for all these players. If you're Isaiah, you got to know that there's you got to get in the gym and you got to get jumpers up. There's so many things to like about him, but in this day and age of pro basketball, if your lead guard is shooting 27% from three, you can't play.
Yeah, agreed. And, some guys do end up figuring it out, and then there are a lot of guys who, doesn't matter how many reps you take, it still isn't good enough. Ricky Rubio, right? It had every other skill you need from an NBA point guard except for that one, and fell out of the league pretty quickly as a result of it.
That's true.
And shooting is more important now than it was then.
It is. All right, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you.
No
okay.
worries. Good to see you too.
Andy Larson live here at Beer Bar. It's 161 East, 200 South. Come on by and say hello. Cool event coming up on Thursday. It's Pie and Beer Day at the ballpark at the old home of the Salt Lake Bees, Smith's Ballpark. And then on Wednesday night, starting at 7 o'clock, they're going to have kind of an opening Pie and Beer Day party here at Beer Bar with a couple of DJs. That starts at 7 o'clock on Wednesday. All right, we'll get to the final hour of the show coming up on the other side on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up, final segment of the program for this Tuesday afternoon. We've had a good time out here with our friends at Beer Bar. 161 East, 200 South. They're open right now. We got some soccer and baseball on TV. This is your home for all RSL watch parties. It's a great place to watch Utah football. Just about a mile away from the stadium. NFL Sundays, and then obviously all college football, college hoops. Good time down here. Watch Jazz games as well. Appreciate Rich and Duncan and the crew having us back. When we're back at Beer Bar, you guys know that fall is right around the corner, and football is almost here. So there you go. Fun show today. A lot of different topics going on. College football media days, kind of taking the topic tree, as they say, with the ACC in Charlotte and the Big Ten in Vegas. We've got the MLS Skills Challenge. If you guys want to watch a young Diego Luna show his stuff, that'll be at 7 o'clock Mountain Time on Apple Television as we inch closer and closer to the start of college and pro football. I want to remind you that Beer Bar is going to be hosting a party on Wednesday evening starting at 7 o'clock. On Thursday, it is for some Pioneer Day and for others Pioneer Day. You guys celebrate however you want. No judgment here. For those of you that want to imbibe on Pioneer Day, start your celebrations Wednesday night here at Beer Bar at 7 o'clock. And it'll go till close. I believe that's till 2 a.m. They're going to have a bunch of DJs. One will be outside. They're offering a special bourbon caramel apple pie that you can buy here at Beer Bar. And then the day of Pioneer Day, they'll start things out at the ballpark at 9 o'clock where they're going to have a kickball tournament. And one of the teams entered will be featuring Nick Romano and Kyle Beckerman, which feels a little bit unfair. They're going to offer coconut curry chicken pot pie. There are going to be 21 different breweries. Bar X Hopkins will be there. They've got a mango passion fruit sour beer, which people can check out there. So definitely check it out at the ballpark for Pioneer Day on Thursday and get it started Wednesday night here at Beer Bar. Porter, do you feel like one that could celebrate both Pioneer Day and Pioneer Day?
I was going to say quite particularly.
Yeah.
I am Pioneer stock of the LDS Pioneers who first got to Utah, but also the ones that were okay with some beer and pie and other unsavory things that we can leave there. My name is Porter for a reason, named after one Rockwell. So yeah, I'm okay with going both ways there.
There you go. No judgment here. So support our good friends at Beer Bar. Always have a good time. But before we say goodnight, Porter, back in studio on a Wednesday. What can we expect on a Wednesday show?
On a Wednesday show, our Friday, of course, will be off for the Pioneer Day holiday. Matt Brown stops by a weekly, or rather monthly, check-in with our friend from Extra Points. We'll get the latest in the off-season and the landscape of college sports. We will chat with one Chris Cumrani. He will be in studio, courtesy of The Athletic. 38 days away from Utah football. We'll have Bill Riley on the program. Your friend Reese Peck will stop by the show, and we'll go from there on a Wednesday edition.
That will be a Wednesday show that you guys will not want to miss. And as Porter referenced, it will be our final live show of the week as we are off for Pioneer Day or Pioneer Day, and we'll bring a best of show for you. We'll be back live on a Monday edition of the program. Special thank you today to Stevenson Sylvester, Pablo Mastroianni, Joe Cravens, and Andy Larson. Brad Wheeler stopped by as well. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show, go to the website, ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. The ESPN mobile app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store for free. And then for what we do specifically in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page and give us your support if you like what we do. Available wherever you get your shows. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars that helps. Reporter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Tuesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Wednesday edition of the program. As always, you can find that right here on ESPN 700.